Good morning, good afternoon, and or good evening, Smite fans. Welcome into your first of many broadcasts for the EU SEC Week 1 Phase 2 at this point in time. I am Supersonic Blood. It's good to be back, and joining me for this, we got Jack Judas, who's now going from Chair 1 to Chair 2, so hopefully you learned a lot yesterday, and actually that brings up a good point. There is a lot of changes that have gone on right now, so is there anything major that came out from yesterday that you think EU's also going to be doing?
Well, nothing major that was too different. Of course, we are playing on the previous patch, as these are from last weekend, so will be a slight adjustment to what we've seen in the Pro League this weekend so far. But, you know, we will be able to see a bit of what was happening last week, but also maybe some interesting things that we might not have thought of.
Certainly is to be the case. We had an Arachne yesterday going off in the jungle, so we'll have to see whether or not something like that goes brought over into the EU side of things, but we're not going to go ahead and waste much time here on that. Picks and bans are ready, so P's and B's pretty please on that side of things. We have Arrow Scorpions. Oh, sorry, no, that was yesterday. It was Solar Scarabs and Hex Mambo. Look, it's early in the morning for me, okay? Yeah. It's early in the morning. I moved from EU to NA, and I'm still up at this time in the morning doing the EU side of things. But no, Solar Scarabs and Hex Mambo. Hex Mambo were the team that kind of, you know, they were last season, or last phase, I should say, they were the #1 team, but whether or not that's going to be what ends up happening here, we'll only have to see as time will tell. Bans-wise, Sun Wukong and Amaterasu, seems like it's solo-focused so far, even this Thor.
Yeah, pretty solo focused. We've seen a lot of Sun Wukong or Amma. It tends to find that Sun Wukong would get banned out and Amma normally the top pick. Chernobog as well, something completely expected. But you're right what you were saying, Blair, about the teams, because Hex Mambo, Solar Scarabs, I believe, are the top 2 teams last phase. However, both teams going through a little bit of a change-up because Solar Scarabs bring in Zyrhoes and Deathwalker. And I believe emilitoo as well. It's actually quite a change-up. Whereas
and the French Emperor.
Yeah, and the French Emperor. I think Sap 7 was playing for Solar Scarabs last phase too. Like, everything's just all up in the air right now. So lots of change, lots of interesting things to be seen, a few different matchups coming through. But Muzen being banned away, that is an absolute shot at Sap 7. Played this god, I think, 4 times last phase, won every single one of them. So not surprising to see that one taken off the board. And of course, the Pele does leave this top pick wide open. Could it be a Charon? That would be very exciting. Didn't actually see any Charon yesterday. Not picked or banned. Was totally ignored. And yeah, will be locked in. So Solar Scarabs looking to row it down.
They certainly are. And the thing that I like about this is, although a lot of the sort of high-end pros seem to look at this gun and go, it's a support, like 100%. This is support, support, support. You can throw it solo. Suffers a little bit from clear. I personally, as someone who plays mostly solo, enjoy being able to just run at people, and Charon does that phenomenally. But we talk about that kind of thing. Nike as well. So a little bit of this yesterday as well, but pairing that up, looking at potentially a Hachiman. Given the hunters that are still available, Hachi one of those that did get a buff, so looking to see whether those buffs work out well for Spudio.
Yeah, and of course the Nike coming in. Nike, one of the best gods at dealing with magical ADCs, which we've seen a lot of lately. You know, that barrier formation does fantastically into the pulse autos coming out from Freya. Also deals well with Olorun, which has been a popular pick. It's funny to see we still have this shift between NA and EU, whereas the magical ADCs were absolutely top priority yesterday, and all of a sudden we're seeing, you know, Nike and Hachiman locked in way over any of those, including Martichoras. Now, of course, Charon and Martichoras both somewhat flex potential. Like, Martichoras generally finding the mid lane as opposed to being played in the dual lane. With an Anhur, I think it's probably going in the mid lane now. But also, we still don't really know where that Charon's going. It could be a pretty telegraphed top 3, or it could still mix it up just a little bit more. So, Mambo gonna have to deal with what they've got, what they can see, you know, and how they pick around that. Looks like Susano gonna be the one that they choose to deal with.
It's not too bad of a pick. It's very jungle focused, can run through them with the Marty and the Anhur. These are 2 very squishy gods. What surprises me is, you mentioned Nike, the barrier formation, absolutely great against magical autos like Pulse or from Olorun. Yeah, it still works on normal hunter basics as well. So Scarabs picked that into the Nike, maybe hoping that you can't hit both of them. Positioning for me is like the first thing that goes through my mind. Nike, forefront, walls everything. But if one of these two hunters can get around or through that, then we could be seeing Solar Scarabs running away with it. Bans-wise, Circuit and Naja. My first thought is, oh yeah, these are support bans, because there's the Ymir as well on that side. We do see the Agni taken off the table, because mid looking for Mambo. Sap, again, Agni was another really popular pick last split, so not surprised to see that taken away. But there's still Raijin open. Thoth got buffs as well. Could be looking for something there on that side of the table. But Atlas for support, it's aggressive, but I don't necessarily feel like it's the top one.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like there's a very polarizing discussion around Atlas. Like, some people will swear by this god, that they're very strong, especially when you want to get aggressive. Others tend to find it doesn't really do too much. Now, the big thing about Atlas is if you are playing with an Atlas as your support and Nike for your solo lane, very low amounts of peel available to the team. So understandable to combine this with a Hachiman who can be quite safe themselves. You know, of course, has the mounted archery to just get out of jail whenever needed. But, ooh, that's a Daji coming through with a Chang'e. Now, Chang'e, one of those gods that is, you know, a bit of a sleeper beads burner. And of course, pair that fantastically well with Daji. And it's been a very long time since we've seen a Chang'e. Even when healers were particularly prominent, very rare that we actually saw this god. So I assume that will be a Chang'e in the solo lane. And, well, I'm really excited to see how that pans out.
I am as well. Chang'e, like, last time I can think of seeing a Chang'e is DJ Pernicus, and that's sort of the Chang'e jungle era of time, so I don't think we'll be seeing that with the Daji, but now we've got a Zhong, and having seen what the SPL can do with that, Typhon's Fang seems to be a ridiculously popular item, and Zhong just heals through everything, so now you've got a fantastically strong frontline in Nike and Atlas. And if you can just sit a Zhong in the middle of all of that, popping off the ult, not getting damaged, Mambo have got a really solid comp. That is, of course, if everything works out perfectly for them, though.
Yeah, it's a bit of an all-in composition from the Mambo. Like, I feel like, you know, you're going to have the Gamma Ray Burst from Atlas come down, Sentinel Zeus from Nike, and of course releasing those demons as Zhong likes to do. That's about 6 seconds of absolutely unstoppable team fight. But then I wonder how the fights would go after that. I think if we've got some longer engagements, something like the sustain from Chang'e might help out, or just Martichoras pumping out damage from long range, could, you know, pan out quite well for Solar Scarabs in a long engagement. So we'll have to see exactly how these two square up against each other.
We certainly will. And with picks and bans done, it is time to see how the game is won. Game number 1 of our EU Phase 2 SCC broadcasts underway. Solar Scarabs and Hex Mambo will be kicking us off for this one. And it does look like everything is where we expected it to be right now.
Yeah, everyone, you know, no one trying to be too spicy. You know, there was the potential for some sort of Atlas mid, Nike support, you know, things that we have seen that, you know, thankfully aren't seeing this time around. But, yeah, you know, it's all standard across the board in what you would expect. You know, not too surprising to see Chang'e in the solo lane. I feel like if you are going to play Chang'e, it's probably best there. We did see in the past Chang'e in mid, generally when some games were being played online, of course, does well when you're on ping. But, you know, it won't be so relevant this time. And I think, you know, having the space to just farm up and show up much later on. You know, we do actually see a purification beads coming through from Deathwalker, not the standard teleport. Means it probably feels pretty safe. And then later on, I'd expect to see a blink actually coming through too. And I do want to see how this Chang'e performs, because while it's lacking a bit of frontline, the potential to just end the game with a Chang'e play is always going to be there. So, yeah, I have to, for sure, keep an eye on Deathwalker.
Agreed. And it's always that sort of death by 1,000 cuts or death by 1,000 waxing moons in Chang'e's case. Kind of a battle mage. Loves to sit in the middle of a team fight. So, kind of like the Zhong in that similar idea as we can see in the mid lane. Dzoni trying to push up there. Emperor here, not doing bad. And that's a question I want to ask, is always when I see junglers, my first thought is, which jungler dictates this early pace? Susano and Daji both kind of feel like they want to vie for that. Is that going to potentially result in more early ganks, or do they both kind of just go for farm?
I think what will likely happen here is both junglers will try to get that edge on farm, just get a little bit more than your opposing number, because if you manage to tick over for example, level 4, while the other's still level 3, that's the best opportunity you're going to get to fight. I would say both of these junglers aren't too keen to fight each other. I think it also depends on who gets on the front foot first, but already a first shield buff going the way of the Solar Scarabs, and emilitoo just more than happy to poke and prod Spudio under the tower, similar to Zyrhoes being poked and prod by Dzoni, but everything's still okay. No one's going to be in too much of a panic just yet. I do feel like both these teams want to sort of consolidate this early game and then show up together in the mid game.
Yeah, and I like what you said there. It's all little pokes and prods and testing reflexes and reactions from things. Zyrhoes very cool, calm, and collected. Doesn't waste anything. Even picked up the speed buff to start off the game. Don't know if that was intentional, just for that extra movement speed around on the map, but hey, it's keeping them safe at this point in time. As you can see, no one has forgotten a recipe, so Hazer will be happy with that one. No angry tweets needed for that, but yeah, like you said. But for me, like we said, we're still on bonus balance for 10.9, so we're not seeing some of those recipe changes. It's all about the cooldown, and it's all about potentially the really how that ends up working out. As do see Cozy ends up picking up emilitoo. I have to imagine that that is standing on tower line in front of an Atlas. Someone's going to punish you for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's just what Atlas does, right? It's almost similar to the old school of Sobek, where just if you're within a certain range, you are at risk. And, I mean, we saw how emilitoo was playing it. Maybe felt confident that they'd be able to roll themselves out of that, but evidently not. And that will be a first blood already on the board for Hex Mambo. And not that it's going to make too much of a difference. Of course, it is on the support. It would be much worse if that went on to, for example, Dzoni, or even if it did go on to Spudio, giving this Hachiman some space. It is on Cozyx, and of course, Atlas will absolutely love to pick up an early kill. Is of course one of those supports that loves to poke and prod, as we've already mentioned. emilitoo, though, completely unfazed by that early death, going for a purple buff invade completely on their own.
It's very Trix Tank-esque, I feel, from this. That kind of just be annoying, waste some of their time, make them think a little bit harder. Meanwhile, Echrome's going to go ahead and just get an entire wave, start pushing that towards the tower, which does mean that they will lose a little bit of gold, will the Hex Mambo duo lane, but already one of the bastions down as well. So Echrome's had a fair time from this side of the lane, and looking at their build as well, they've got a lot of early sustain. This Anhur looks like they just want to get into the Assy and then fight as hard as they can.
Yeah, of course, picked up the golden gooseberries as well, so we'll be clearing pretty easily, and having that attack speed as well will just proc that recipe much faster. So understandable why they're looking to get aggressive and really push the envelope in that duo lane. Like you said, already one bastion down. That has given room for emilitoo to rotate to mid early on, give some space to Zyrhoes on this Martichoras. TheFrenchEmperor going in, though, over just a small camp.
Just a small, but they have gone and pushed themselves up. That's Trickster Spirit in. They've got no way to blink out from this, because Julio is keeping them in combat. They will be able to get away towards Deathwalker. But then we already see, at this point in time, French not afraid of Dzoni. And with that already Jotun's Wrath finished, I was going to say, first item to me, always a good indicator of what these jungles want to do. Daji, Jotun's Wrath cooldown, don't care about anything else. I just want to use my abilities as often as possible.
Yeah, like obviously going for that right off the bat. Has the Bomber's Dagger as well, so probably building that into Bomber's Hammer later on for some extra cooldown and everything. It makes sense. Whereas we see Dzoni on the other side. Is that a Transcendence they're going for? Like I know Susano can just blow people up, but you maybe want a bit more utility. And the Jotun's Wrath obviously just such a good jungler item. A lot of junglers will swear by it. They'll only take a Jotun's Wrath first, no matter what the meta is, no matter what's happening. They'd like to pick up a Jotun's Wrath. So a bit of an adjustment going out from Dzoni. But of course, that does, follow up with how there's been not a lot of activity early on. Maybe Dzoni's recognizing, hey, we both want to farm. I'm not going to be needed to fight. I can take this time to stack up all of this damage to maybe show up later on. And again, that is just how this game's going. Only the one kill, which is a bit of a slip up from emilitoo, if anything. It wasn't like there was a full-on engagement. So again, continuing on with this slow-paced style. Deathwalker and Julio going to be absolutely delighted with that. These soul laners love to just farm up that player damage before anything else is going on. So yeah, I think pretty reasonably slow start. I expect our first bits of flares will probably show up either around this Gold Fury, if anyone gets some sort of fight, but most likely around this first spawn of the beacon.
It's good to be back in the whole EU side of things. The
Oh,
nice,
yes.
slow, meticulous. I've loved this. I've missed this whole side of things. We said it was that chess game. It's pushing forward ever so slightly, seeing if anyone makes a mistake, but not overextending yourself. And like you said, from the idea from what Johnny's doing, that's also putting sort of the respect to the team. Like, does the rest of the team want to fight as well? Spudio not getting a choice in the matter, so having to do so. Now looking to go back in with the mounted archery. It's clipped on by some work. Gamma ray burst comes through, but it's just low health bars for everyone. Emilitoo will top everyone off with the meditation. So that is a second look for the buff. Actually stolen away there by Cozy. Very nicely done, but it seems like, yeah, Hex Mambo, they're not the ones calling these early fights, so they're just letting Solar Scarabs run at them and punishing them for it.
Yeah, it was one of the most EU plays I've ever seen there, where there's a big scrap going on, big fighting back and forth, and then all it was really for was for a shield buff, and then of course the support steals it. That's just how it all goes, right? You know, there is no bigger EU play than that. But yeah, it was a bit of signs of life coming out. Like you said, Solar Scarabs are the ones pushing a bit more aggressively for pressure, but not necessarily too much. You know, I do feel like there was a lot of expended there. Of course, Echrome losing the beads. Maybe didn't need to, but Johnny is still a threat. But Johnny with Transcendence only not even halfway stacked. It's not, you know, it's not too dangerous, this Susano at the moment. Might get caught in the jungle here. Emilitoo hunting. Spot that one out. But, you know, it's hard to say where this game's going to go while it's still in its infancy. Because, I mean, a buff evade attempted, nothing happening. And, you know, both sides more than content to just keep farming up.
And if that is going to be the case, then we'll take it to its extreme. Let's say that, gods forbid, this goes 0-1 for the next 15 minutes or so.
Oh, don't
Looking at
tease
this,
me.
everyone's level 20. Looking at this, everyone on the extremes, level 20. Is there any late game difference between these two teams? Because they both kind of look like they want to just team fight.
Yeah, I think specifically for Hex Mambo come for a very heavy front line. And as we mentioned in Picks and Bans, there will be like a good few seconds of real team fight potential with the Gamma Ray Burst and unleashing the demons. It just then depends on how the Solar Scarabs can react to that, because they're pretty good at dealing with it. If the Hex Mambo decide to just barrel as a 5, well, you know, you got Deathwalker there, ready to just stun everyone. So you certainly have to be wary of that. French Emperor, of course, will likely be lurking around the backside, but doesn't really have any targets as this Daji. I think it will be a tough engage onto either Sap or Spudio. Like really, how are you going to have the time to get off all of your damage on those gods? So it really will come down to how well Zyrhoes and Echrome can deal with the front line. You know, you tend to find your mid lane mage is the god most adept at dealing with some tanky frontliners, but it will just have to be lots and lots of basics to the face. And I think, you know, that this hefty frontline will deal with Zyrhoes' Martichoras quite well, because Marty's perfect for just punishing you at low health, poking you down so that you are in that sort of 25% kill threshold, but a fight on right.
Need it. Need it. Julio pulled back in by the Pal Lao. Does not get to escape under the safety of the tier 1 tower. Emperor will go ahead and answer things back. Beacon charging now, 10 minutes in. So it's nice to see the Solar Scarabs actually get something on the answer back. There's Johnny just stopping the back from Deathwalker there. Bastion's now full as well for the Solar Scarabs solo side of things, which looks pretty nice for them, and a potential look for an invade. I love this call. Just take absolutely as much as you can from just one death.
Yeah, and of course, Julio there, unfortunately, still had a minute on the teleport. Bit of brawling going off on this left-hand side. Both sides really want this shield buff, but Echrome on the Anhur into a Hachiman, always going to win that fight in this even state as we find ourselves in. And in fact, a whole item ahead of Spudio. Assuming that means Spudio's got plenty of gold in the pocket, likely to be building into that XC themselves, and there we go, just popping right up. There it is. So now, all of a sudden, Spudio might feel confident to take more of a fight, but even then, Anhur into Hachiman in a laning phase is always going to be in favor of the Anhur. So I think Spudio will just have to play a bit more cautiously. It is only a level down. It's not the end of the world, especially because this game will be going late by the looks of it. I don't see much else happening until then. So as a Hunter player, you can at least accept, okay, I will be able to get my damage online. We'll have the XE. Might even go into crit. We did see a few crit builds coming out, and especially for Echrome, having a Martichoras in the mid lane means you have physical pen damage from elsewhere. So you can't afford to just go for this crit style and devalue that ever powerful spectral armor. So plenty to be seen. This beacon will be coming up soon, and again will be the next point of contention. But big grouping up for Hex Mambo on the left-hand side. They really want to make a play somewhere. It's just really not landing itself here.
Oh, it's a trap. ML looking to try and poke their way forward.
Never mind.
Just bait the trap. Thankfully, though, rose themselves out of that one. Love that play from emilitoo. He knows there's a trap, and he doesn't step too far forward for it. That said, though, Scarabs now not in a position to try and defend this first beacon. They're going to give that one up, as looks like Dzoni might be making a rotation over left as well. But it is spotted out by Emperor.
Look at this. Everyone's just standing by walls, peeking around the corner, looking for someone else. It's like being in the trenches. And if you poke your head up, you're just going to find yourself in trouble. But now we're sort of flipped it a bit. Hex Mambo are the ones stepping up. They clearly want to make a play at this Gold Fury, but not without securing a pick first. It has to be noted. There is really no good secure on either side for these objectives. So if you are coin flipping it, this is like the biggest coin flip in history, because no one is going to be able to out secure anyone. It's just going to be a case of who has won the fight, who has got the positioning to actually take this objective down. So I'm not too surprised that we're seeing this lack of real engagement, because while both teams are suited to team fighting, you don't really team fight in the first 15 minutes. It's generally about who can pull an objective. Can you sneak one away? Neither side's particularly good at burning one. Neither side is good at securing an objective. It just doesn't make sense. So again, that's why I've been pointing at these beacons. But for whatever reason, Solar Scarabs felt like they weren't in a position to take that fight. But at some point, you're going to want to, pick one up eventually. These beacons do provide a good benefit across the entire game, especially when we get to these late game sieges. So you can give up the first one, but I'd like to see them at least contest the second one.
Yeah, it's another sort of consensus. Being one beacon behind doesn't feel too bad. Being two beacons behind, noticeable. 3 beacons behind, you are severely handicapped in any kind of a fight here. But as we do see it take a little bit of time, 14 minutes in, Deathwalker seems very content to be sat in this lane. They've got about half a level lead over Julio right now, and definitely been bullying, even to the point of looking for these double stacking kinds of builds. And Johnny's doing something similar. There's a Soul Eater second item. Wow. Johnny is not worried about PvP. It's all about the PvE.
I guess both teams before this game just had a handshake just to say, yeah, you know what, let's just wait till 30 minutes. Like, no fighting till 30. Everyone's just double stacking. Like, Deathwalker not even started the Warlock staff yet, which takes tons of time to stack. I did opt for the Breastplate of Valor first, which I do quite like. I still think it's a good item, even in this patch, which is, of course, before the price got reduced on it. It's just very good into Nike, gets you all the cooldown you're going to need. But then going for the double stacking later, it's going to be a ton of power. So expect this Chang'e to be hitting hard and hitting often. But I mean, if there's no fights to be had, all of this damage might even just come down to one big fight. And yeah, like I said, double stacking as well coming out from Dzoni. Clearly, Hex Mambo and Solar Scarabs are both prepared for this to go on long, but I don't know. I just wonder, when will the key point be? Like, how long do you wait? Because Deathwalker is not going to be done for at least another 5 minutes.
That is true. Unless Deathwalker wants to start trying to stack this via kills. It is 5 stacks per god kill, so
that's true.
They could look to try and do that. That said, on the other side of things, Dzoni now starting to work on some more damage. We haven't seen any major rotations. I mean, even you look at the supports, they were both sat around this side of the map for the good 6-7 minutes, and they're even on their way back over now as Spudio forced to ult away. Dzoni will have the beads to deal with the Pow Lao. So that clears that up, as it's a 3v3 over this side of the map. Cozy looking to try and go forward. But once again, it's all over this shield buff.
It's much ado about nothing, right? Or much ado about shield buff. They're all just kind of... like you see how that fight goes. Spudio is backing away very early, was fully aware that that rotation is coming in. Even when there wasn't a huge commitment, just burns the mounted archery anyway, because, I mean, why not? What are you saving it for? You may as well get out of this ever so slightly dangerous situation. It's all surely going to come to a head at some point. I mean, we haven't actually been told necessarily if this game has actually ended yet. You know, this was played last weekend, but we don't know for a fact that this game has a resolution. Right now, we're looking quite some way from getting it, but of course, it will come down to these huge team fights. Like I do expect this Pyromancer has been sat there for a long time too. Gold Fury, of course, wide open, but Pyromancer doesn't have the Oracle vision, so of course you might find there's an opportunity. And here we go, Hex Mambo. Here's the excitement building, so I can feel it. Pulls up the Pyromancer right as the beacon is spawning, but Deathwalker spotted it out. Deathwalker
on the rotation. Out comes the Styx Torment, or River Styx, just meandering across the lane, letting us know that emilitoo is on the way.
That wave was
timing from Hex Mambo, though. Trying to just pull everyone in directions. But Deathwalker has made the first major rotation out from solo, shortly followed by Julio. And it is all about this beacon here.
Beacon all started up, no one really contesting it. It's a bit of poking and prodding, and Cozy's just gonna watch it, just let it go. But I think that wave we just saw coming out from emilitoo was a fantastic summarization of the game. It was the slowest looking thing. When you see that wave in a team fight, it can be quite impactful, and it doesn't appear to be that slow. It just sort of, like you said, meandered all the way over. Somehow Julio still got hit by it, despite it being the most telegraphed thing. But it's some good entertainment. Hello? But Echrome blasts the Desert Fury. I think maybe waiting on a rotation from TheFrenchEmperor. Everyone again just resetting to their positions. Have equally traded out the beacons now, so we are effectively all square. There is a gold lead for Soulless Scarabs. I'm not quite sure where they've built that up. Have had a bit more of the advantage on the shield buff, so maybe comes from the shield camp. So a surprising amount of a gold lead there. But the big thing is we're still pretty much even, with the beacons being even now as well. I mean, this third beacon, surely someone has to take a lead eventually.
That is, yeah, someone will eventually start taking leads. Hell, the Titans will start fighting each other if the players won't start fighting them. So that will be something for the players to fight over. I believe it will be in duo lane right now, looking at how they are. But Deathwalker, 2v1 situation, grabs out an ultimate, finds themselves very low under tower, mistimes the immunity, so gets knocked up by Dzoni, and Dzoni puts them down, thanks to a good little rotation there. Started to see some aggression from Soulless Scarabs out on the duo side, but realizing there is none, we'll go ahead and turn it back to PvE. As Dzoni starts to make their big impact. They've got their 3 items, they're done stacking. Now it's time to start stacking the kills.
Yeah, I think all of that stacking damage was absolutely necessary as well. Deathwalker does pretty much everything right. Only a slight mistiming on the ult fired from Dzoni, but of course Dzoni held it. You know, that's more of a good play from Johnny's point of view. You know, held on to it, was fully aware that that ability was still active. But you know, now we're seeing it. Look, we're seeing Dzoni rotate now to the mid lane, who have managed to get the death from above out from Zyrhoes as well, so not too surprising to finally see this Susano on the move. I do wonder exactly where to look at next. Julio still lurking around. Beacon's nowhere to be seen. Looks like the grouping will be over on this left-hand side. I just wonder when the trigger will be pulled, because the poking and prodding still not quite happening. But yeah, 5-man grouping this time for Hex Mambo in the left jungle.
Yeah, and everyone's grouping up. Deathwalker's gone right on over to solo side. So as soon as he's on the map, look at where Hex Mambo are going. They're going straight over towards this Fury. First one of the game, 20 minutes in. Echrome is around to potentially try and steal it. Will not be able to do so. Out comes the Stygian Tsunami, for lack of better wording on it. So they will trade out Pyromancer for it. Who's going to pick up the Runic Bomb? The answer is no one, because neither Zyrhoes nor Deathwalker have the capacity to in their inventory.
Yeah, we do see this sometimes where the Runic Bomb gets somewhat wasted. We might see someone rotate over, but by the looks of it, it's just emilitoo rowing as fast as his arms can carry him over to that bomb. But sometimes players have found that having the Runic Bomb in your pocket, generally it's early on, you want the wards instead. Of course, we're not at that early stage anymore. We are 20 minutes in, despite all Tier 1 towers still standing. So it almost feels like an early game stage. But that will be the Runic Bomb now despawned and off the table. It would have been good to have that, but still plenty of damage coming up from TheFrenchEmperor as well. I don't know if I've ever seen tier 1 towers last this long in year 10. So it's, again, unsure of exactly where the game's going to go, because Hex Mambo picking up that Gold Fury is, of course, exactly what they would have wanted to do, and already had a kill onto Deathwalker just before that. All that's done, though, is equalize the game. Still hasn't actually netted a lead for anyone. Both mid laners level 20 and full zeros across the scoreboard. So I mean, everyone's quite happy, but this will be the time where we'll actually see some grouping coming up, because there's really nothing left to do other than knock down towers and take out the Fire Giant.
Agreed. You can only hit level 20 once. There are only so many items you can afford to carry at this point. We do see a little bit of a deviation between the hunters now. Spudio opting for that dominance, whereas instead Echrome, like you wanted, a little bit more crit. All hunters with a fail knot here at this point in time, so maybe we see some spectral armors come out from Julio. I'd expect to see one on Cozy at the very least.
Echrome gets caught.
The
bees anti-aegis down.
Aegis. That's a lot of damage potential. Sap, though, blinks on in, looking to try and keep the fight going. There's a slow, and Dzoni will be the one who clears this up. Gamma Ray burst through the team fight, as now TheFrenchEmperor looking to turn it around. They will pick up a return kill onto Sap 7. Everyone else looking to try and disengage. It's Solar Scarabs trying to push forward here. Death from above is good enough to secure Dzoni, and that will grab a 2-for-1 in exchange for it. emilitoo trying to just keep tabs on everyone else. The beacon is up, but that's about the only other thing that is up. Fire Giant doesn't look like anyone wants to go that way. They're just content playing this slow.
Yeah, finally a flare-up, but we saw how far Hex Mambo had to dive for that kill. But behind the tier 2 tower, while all tier 1 towers still stand. Like, it's crazy how difficult it was to get that kill onto the Anhur, and of course it just cost them too much. Both the players who dove that deep, Dzoni and Sap 7, are the ones that fall. So Solar Scarabs find that counterpunch they were looking for, and this tower in the mid lane, of course, had the tower in the right lane already taken too, so a huge gold climb. Only 3k though, 23 minutes in. It's not a particularly big lead. It does mean that they would be the favorites to look for this Fire Giant, so expect the Solar Scarabs to group up at this objective, already have good ward coverage, so it's all about Hex Mambo and how they can manage to wrestle back some territory here. Still, eyes on Dzoni. Whatever Dzoni is doing seems to be what the Hex Mambo are having the most success with. Just all depends on if they can find this sort of pick without having to extend so far.
Agreed. And it harkens back to what you mentioned on the desk inside of things. If Hex Mambo pop Recall Demons, Sentinel of Zeus, Gamma Ray Burst, that's 6 seconds of a team fight they win. Anything longer than that, Solar Scarabs can start trying to turn this around, as we can see with the Titans marching down mid lane. That buys Solar Scarab more than enough time to go for this Fire Giant, as emilitoo was pushing against 3. And so they just grab it for free. Hex Mambo find themselves on the back foot. Dzoni's in left lane trying to deal with 2.5 waves. Everyone else sitting back at the tier 2 tower in mid.
Yeah, that's what I just mentioned. The ward coverage is already there for the Solar Scarabs, and I asked how could Hex Mambo wrestle back ward control, and they didn't. They couldn't do it with the Titans pushing down, and of course the front line of the Solar Scarabs barreling down the mid lane too. It was just too much, and I wouldn't say Hex Mambo were unaware that that Fire Giant was happening. I'm almost certain that they were fully understanding and just accepted, you know what, we can't contest it. Exactly. Unable to contest it, just giving it up, giving away a tier 2 tower as well. You can only give up so much, though. As we mentioned, the slow farming game is totally fine when it's equalized, but now with a very handy gold lead and Fire Giant lead for the Solar Scarabs, Hex Mambo are going to have to find their best defense, but it certainly won't be a good one.
Certainly won't be. I mean, you look how quickly these towers are falling. It's a double hunter comp. Late game, this is what they're designed to do. Solar Scarabs have just kind of sat here and built this massive powder keg. They've dried it, they've aged it, they've packed it as tight as they can. They needed a single spark, and that was all that they took. The whole thing is ignited now into a 6,000 gold lead, and they're looking for a big team fight here. Stygian goes through, emilitoo leading the charge. It looks like it's onto Cozy and finding who they can. Round the back, though, big waxing moon might delay a little bit of Hex Mambo's push forward. Dzoni is getting taken down. No one else could back him up. TheFrenchEmperor finds another. It's 2 for none, because Zyrhoes cannot just be put down at this point in time. Emperor ends up falling. Echrome picks them all apart. It is a double-double here. 4 for 1. Solar Scarabs bust this game wide open.
Spudio, the only damage that Hex Mambo had left, but got caught in the jungle at a really bad spot because they couldn't get themselves involved in the fight. You see that full health, full mana? It's because they just weren't a part of it. And our entire engagement has low health bars from the Solar Scarabs, but it's just the front line of Julio and Cozyx there to try to deal with it. And they're barreling into the Titan. This might well be the game.
It could very well be. Spudio, you weren't involved in the last team fight. Let's see if you can be involved in what could be the last team fight here. Titan, though, falling just too quickly. Spudio jumps on through. Emilitoo falls, but so does the Titan. Solar Scarabs punch hard. They take game 1 against Hex Mambo.
Yeah, it was simple from them in the end. Never stressed or worried were Solar Scarabs. There was that one moment where the Gold Fury did go the way of Hex Mambo, but like I mentioned then, it only equalized the game. It didn't actually put them in any sort of commanding position, and the game just seemed to collapse from the moment that they dove behind the tier 2 tower just to kill off an Anhur. Like, it all of a sudden gave some space to the Solar Scarabs. They were able to then get the next beacon, get the ward coverage up fire, turn it into a fire, and finally, we did see Hex Mambo take a fight. It just wasn't at all what they were looking for, and unsurprisingly, ended up losing the game off of that.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate situation. I think there's a difference between not losing the game and winning the game. There's very big differences in there, and just stalling it out so long. I think if Hex Mambo, like, we're used to seeing Dzoni. When it's a Dzoni game, it's like, oh my god, Dzoni's running the game. I'm thinking 18 kills in like 25 minutes. Dzoni kind of was just present in the game around, and they eventually started going, oh wait, I need to lead the charge. And then the rest of the team, we mentioned this front line is amazing. They were in the back line a lot of the time here. So maybe that's something we see changed up in picks and bans here, or is it just like a play difference?
I think it might be a bit of a play difference. We did see that in that last big engagement, Dzoni got a lot of damage out, and like I said, there were some low health bars. It was a very widespread, scrappy fight. Then all of a sudden, Solar Scarabs just said, hey, we have the Chang'e. Let's just all stand on top of each other. They can't kill us all. And yeah, they couldn't. At that point, they just ran out of damage. Again, a big part is Spudio getting cut off on the back of the fight. I think if you can take a better engagement where you are all consistently getting your damage off, I think all of a sudden Hex Mambo would have been in a good position there. But maybe have to change things up a bit. And like you said, maybe get Dzoni on something he can be a bit more proactive on.
Yeah, it's all shoulda, coulda, wouldas here, but that's game 1 in the books. We'll go back to the drawing board and back to the drafting for game 2. But to do that, we're going to throw it to a quick break, so don't go anywhere. Coming right up will be game 2.
They say that life's too short to be holding this tight, so why am I walking light? And in this world of light and color, I'm not afraid of the night, when this future's so bright. Yeah, I got all these friends, and we're like, it's not the end. Whoa, this new world is ours. This new world is ours, and all these friends, and we're like, it's not the end. Whoa, this new world is ours. This new world is ours. This new world is ours. They say the life's too short, and I can feel in my bones, the horizon is close now, now, now. And the world's been changing lately, but after the storm, we come out strong now, now. Yeah, I got all these friends, and we're like, it's
number 1 between Solar Scarabs and the Hex Mambo team. And surprisingly enough, Solar Scarabs are the team that end up coming away with the first matchup here. A bit of a slow burner, but as soon as it ignited, it was done in 5 minutes.
Yeah, done in an instant, you know. It almost felt like Hex Mambo were sort of waiting for their time to shine. And hopefully that time to shine is game 2, because they waited far too long in that first game. Did finally try to make things happen and did get punished for it. But yeah, I hope to see a bit more of a proactive game from both sides, because both sides are sort of content to just let things sit.
They certainly were, and we'll have to see whether that change-up comes in the game or before the game with the picks and bans. And for my money and things, it wasn't necessarily like a comp difference thing. I think it was just like you said, a playstyle. Dzoni going for this double stacking build and then showing up 15 minutes in. Like, we were asking ourselves in the break and things, what is it that they were trying to do with it? Is it just farm and out-sustain? Because you could have just built brawlers for that. But whether or not they end up banning away the Chang'e, we'll have to see in picks and bans. So we go ahead and get on into those as soon as we can for game number 2. And it is Hex Mambo. At the very least, they are going to be on the first pick side. And first pick last time was a Charon. I don't think emilitoo necessarily had to have that. And immediately, yeah, they just respect Deathwalker and say, hey, that Chang'e, that waxing moon, no more.
Yeah, I get the feeling Chang'e is what sort of I don't want to say frightened Dzoni, but I think that's what Dzoni was concerned about. I think that was why you're going for the double stacking build with the hi-rez, just to really burst someone down and prevent this Chang'e from growing into a team fight. But I think while the rest of the composition for Solar Scarabs is very safe, you know, Anhur, very well-known safeguard. Martichoras just literally takes off into the sky if you try to get aggressive. So I can understand why maybe there was this thought that, oh, we need as much power as we can get just to take them down instantly. It really didn't work out. I think you can still do that with, for example, like a Brawler Speed Stick, as we'd mentioned, and just a bit more aggression. I think you're always going to struggle to take down these very safe guards when they're not being harassed to actually use up those actives. You know, if an Anhur's got beads and Aegis, we saw how deep you have to go to try to kill them off. So not surprising to see that taken, you know, maybe an adjustment around that. But Freya coming out from the Mambo this time, there's at least spells to me that they are expecting Echrome to have to play a bit more carefully and get Spudio up and running again.
Looks to be the case. Unfortunately, it does also mean, hey, I'm going to farm for 20 minutes. I'll see you when I'm level 20. Whether or not the Solar Scarabs let them do so, they are going to run back the Charon, which emilitoo had a fine enough game on it. And with Zyrhoes going back to the Martichoras as well. I mean, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm sure Deathwalker can find another Sustain God Mage in his kit.
Yo, hell? Like, hell exists.
Yo, give me that. Actually, give me that.
Possibly, because
then we will be going for 30 minutes.
Yeah, if it was a stylistic choice, you know, we still also have Aphrodite on the table. Gods that have fallen away lately, but still an option if that's what Mambo feel like they wanted to go with. But a tier has been locked in, and this is a different style of solo laner, but one that we might have maybe seen Deathwalker play before. I'm not certain about that. I feel like there's somewhat of a famous moment from Deathwalker, yeah. But what I want to talk about is this Muzen Carb for SAP 7. An unstoppable pick, and I couldn't even begin to tell you why. You just see SAP 7 on this god, farms up, gets top damage, and wins the game, and you go, oh yeah, was there a bee? And yeah, it killed everyone. That's what happened, but Solar Scarabs look to be running everything right back. So interesting that they think that their composition was just so strong that Mambo can do nothing about it. I'd probably, if I was Mambo right now, want to ban away some of the other pieces. Just generally throw it like a, hey, okay, you got these already. What else have you got? You know, but take away the Anhur. There we go, like clockwork. Take away the Anhur, and just make sure that you can't come up against the same composition which you already struggled against. Because not only is that like kind of really annoying, and look at that, Daiji Anhur off the table. You don't want to have to come up against something you struggled with. So just force Solar Scarabs into something else and see what they got.
I wouldn't be surprised whether or not we would potentially see the Susano for the Solar Scarabs this side on this side for it, because it just does everything that the Daji wanted to do. Maybe it was just the French Emperor saying, hey, I'm just going to play it better than you. As that's what Deathwalker seems to have done. They've picked back up the Nike against Julio. So whether or not that's going to change, no way do we see Chang'e 2 games in a row.
I mean, it's banned, so like...
No way.
I assume
yeah,
that.
There's no way we see that. There's no way we see that.
I mean that's one way to get past the bans, you know, just pick it anyway. You know, like if it's banned now and you really don't want to play again, just no. We banned it so you guys can't play it. We want to pick it now. It will actually be a Terra coming through. So yeah, a nice draft again for the Mambo. I think Dzoni on the Ratatoskr, much more proactive of a god. You know, you can sneak around through the cosmos, find some cheeky angles on people, or just chase down others. And I really like that as this change up. So the Scarabs absolutely content to refuse to pick a god that wasn't played in game 1, it seems. So just having to bring that there. But, you know, I can see Zhong being a strong pick for them. And, yeah, running it almost entirely back from game 1. Another strong front line for the Solar Scarabs this time. And I do wonder how the Mambo can play into that.
Yeah, I'm just running through my head. I'm playing a fun little game I like to do every so often. You look at a full draft and you play, who's that jungler?
That's a good point, yeah.
My first thought is, okay, well, it was Nike solo. Then we see the Zhong and it's like, wait, no, Zhong can go solo. It makes sense. It's a high sustain god for Deathwalker. So it's Nike jungle? Is that something that the French Emperor is going to be able to deal with the rat on, or?
I'm not sure. You know, Ratatoskr into Nike probably just want to avoid that, especially with the warrior base nets being generally a bit stronger in the early game. Maybe that would be the bridge that the Solar Scarabs would use, but it's curious, you know, that there's no god there other than Nike that you would expect to be a jungler. So I mean, I guess we'll find out. You know, it makes sense for it to be a Nike, or of course with the strength of the rest of the lanes. It all just depends on exactly how they want to put it together.
I'm going to throw one thing out here, and I'm going to sound insane if it's wrong, but I'm going to be amazing if it isn't. Nike support Charon jungle, because you get the stacks from the passive on the jungle camps. Okay. And we have seen it run a little bit. I mean, it's like I said, I'm going to sound insane if it's wrong, but I'm going to sound insane if it's right. So I'll throw that one out there as we get through on that. And picks and bans, they're all done. And we can deliberate on this jungle pick as much as we like, but we'll only find out when we go ahead and get into game. Mambo looking to try and battle this one back. And that to me seems like it wants to go late. And it is not what I wanted. It is a Zhong jungle. Judas, explain. Why?
French Emperor and Zhong. Funny that you should have mentioned the Charon stacks coming through, because Zhong, of course, can only build 3 stacks at a time, and most jungle camps do actually have 3 stacks. So understandable that you can at least get some efficient stacks there. You know, there's something. There's some way that you can stack that up relatively easily. With the Bumper's Dagger start, I don't think this is lending itself to being an auto attack based Zhong. I think you just want that anyway to help you with the clear. Of course, does proc on both auto attacks. That's why you've seen French Emperor level up the 3rd ability first. So I don't really know why you would go for this unless Solar Scarabs are expecting another slow game. Because let's not forget, but the jungle role doesn't necessarily have to gank. You know, it's just another avenue for farm, as emilitoo gets a ton of damage already, but it's just another avenue of getting farm, right? That's why, you know, the same with all the lanes. It's just where you find your farm. And if Solar Scarabs are expecting another 20+ minute game for any fighting, just having a Zhong instead of an assassin and then just death balling down the middle might be the way forward for the Solar Scarabs.
It may very well be. We'll have to keep an eye on that and whether or not there's any ganks. Again, though, it feels like this to me seems, hey, Dzoni, you are the one who's going to have to make the shot calls here. You are the one who's going to have to make these early kind of aggressive plays. As we can see, it's level 3s versus 2 and 3. And so Zyrhoes and French Emperor, they just go aggressive in on Dzoni. Cannot dart out of that one. First blood in under a minute and a half, and they're not done. Sab 7's getting run at by the Emperor, but the honey will get them the distance they need. It's a first blood there, and it's on Dzoni. This is a good look for Scarabs.
You know what? Zhong plus Martichoras, I've figured it out. I've finally worked it all out. That is probably the combination of mid and jungle that have the largest player models. And that explains why Dzoni ended up getting locked in there, just stuck in place. What better CC is there than just standing in the way? And yeah, lock Dzoni completely with nowhere to go. You know, you can't dash way through that. Of course, Ratatosk's dash does get stopped. I'm not even sure if he had the dash. Might instead have the kill on the Deathwalker, though. And that's exactly how Dzoni would like to get back into this. So it was an early spill, made up for it quite quickly. Didn't even lose a speed buff because it was the extra 1-2B picked up. But I would expect to see more of that type of play on the side lanes for Dzoni, because I don't think you want to go anywhere near this Martichoras.
Certainly not, especially after giving them over first blood. But already we have 2 kills in 2 minutes. That, I think, outpaces the last game by about 9 minutes, which is pretty good to start things off. As Emil and Cozy,
look, it's the same as game one.
Yeah, just stand there. That's nice to see. Those small moments of, oh, you could try and fight, but there is 0 point here as Dzoni going for a potential invade, does not grab it. Now might find themselves in a bit of trouble, but Julio is here. Goes straight onto the Emperor. Nice blink. Push through. Deathwalker, though, knock up immune. As Emperor's taking a fair bit of damage here, and Julio is more than happy to keep this going because Dzoni's still around. Dzoni blinks in, and Julio picks up the kill.
Julio getting another one there. It's really good to see how aggressive Dzoni wants to play this time compared to previously. You know, already going for that jungle invade, even though it didn't work out. Rather than just going for a full-on retreat, did up to bring Julio over and actually waited around the corner to get involved again in the fight. So I really like that. The play as a whole was really good from both sides, trying to get aggressive and be proactive. Deathwalker leaping in as well, just to try to punish Dzoni for this over aggression. And it's what we need to see, because after the last game being quite so slow, having some much more action to deal with is good, and especially from the side of Hex Mambo. I mentioned French Emperor just wants to farm up on Zhong and take part in team fights later. Getting into the enemy jungle is exactly what you need to do to punish this pick. And I mean, if you're just going to let them get away with it, then so the Scarabs are going to be the deserved winners.
Certainly are, as we do see a little bit more into the duo lane. Both Cozy and emilitoo did seem to stick around for about 6-7 minutes on this side, and with the Freya, I can definitely see that being the case. But hello, there's a speed buff, or a shield buff, excuse me, and there's 2 speed buffs making their way over towards it, Dzoni and French Emperor. But they'll go ahead and both disengage from this. But I love what we see from Dzoni now. Dzoni is not necessarily being aggressive, just, I'm going to stand here. If anyone comes to me, I'll fight them. And if not, then I'm in a great position to do something like this and gank on through. Nice knock up, but it's a whoop that's knocking him up instead. Still, emilitoo will end up falling 3-1 on the scoreline. We are definitely outpacing this game by, I think, the entirety of the game at this point. So 4 kills, 4 minutes. It's a kill a minute. This is the NA side of things.
Yeah, we did see there, like you mentioned, Dzoni's positioning up to French Emperor, just standing there saying, hey, you might catch demons, but you got to be terrified of this little rat. And yeah, French Emperor backs away, goes a much safer route to just get their farm. And Dzoni goes, okay, well, if you are miles away now, I just have a free gank on this left-hand side. It's exactly what we want to see again, the proactiveness that we didn't see in game number 1, because Dzoni just didn't have the pick for it, you know? It's through the Cosmos instead, much more effective of just, oh, okay, we're fighting in left, I'm there. We're fighting in right, I'm going to be there. And look again, Julio and Dzoni pushing way up. Look how far back the Solar Scarabs have to drag this blue buff.
It's not just that, but they've used their kits, their abilities. Now French Emperor under duress. Deathwalker will come in to throw out the ult. In fact, both ults expended on a defensive posturing here. They will try and push everyone out, but Zyrhoes in mid is too low to follow up. emilitoo's not going to be involved in this. This is just a straight 2v2 right now. Dzoni is falling fairly low, but Emperor is also just equally as low. Sprints popped as well to try and run them down. The juke boots are there, but it is still not good enough. Julio now with a 2nd kill to their name, 75% kill credit. They are looking pretty good at Hex Mambo this game.
Yeah, just bullying forward. Somehow steals it. Again, supports and stealing buffs. So that's exactly what EU is all about. But yeah, French Emperor really struggling on this pick already. We're seeing all of the problems with it. It has a Chronos pendant online, but that's not really enough damage to be threatening. Of course, no Typhon's Fang either for all the lifesteal to come through, where you could really become this battle mage style that Zhong wants to be. And I mentioned it, having a Ratatoskr and Tier just going right at you. It's all on the right side of the map so far for Hex Mambo. That's where all of their successes are, and that means you can afford to spend less time for worrying about Spudio. Spudio has the chance and the space to just farm up, because what pressure is Echrome going to do? You know, like it's really hard to really bully a Freya, especially as a god like Hachiman. So I think you need TheFrenchEmperor to grow into this game, but right now it's going to take such a long time to come back that this jungle at the moment totally belongs to Hex Mambo.
Certainly does. And the other issue as well is kind of Zero's playstyle as well. We've seen this a lot on their gods. It's why they like the Baba Yaga. It is a case of, all right, I'm a farm for 25 minutes, get as many stacks and as much power, and then I'm going to come and win team fights for you. If Hex Mambo have already won the game by that time, you don't get the choice to be able to do that. So someone on Solo Scarabs has to pick up the slack here. Deathwalker's not in a position. Who even does that?
Julio might need to be doing that, because they're in trouble right now. Does get away to safety. These solo laners, man, they just get away with whatever. But yeah, right now
that's what we
do. We're gonna need to see exactly why the Solo Scarabs find their way back in, because they don't have a whole lot of clean initiation outside of Deathwalker. You know, Deathwalker leaping in is a fantastic way to start a fight, but aside from that, you're not really going to follow in with the summon sticks from emilitoo. You know, it's not something that you use at the start of a fight. You sort of use it after the fight has already begun. So I'm not quite sure where their angle is going to be. It might just be a case of sitting back, as we saw in game number 1, and maybe looking to at least dissuade Hex Mambo from taking these early objectives, because Spudio, though, might be in some trouble.
Oh, just a little bit, but Johnny's also here. emilitoo turns tail and runs back on through. Summon sticks is used, but Johnny's up in the air. They can keep this chase going. Good knock up onto Emil. The stun's there, and the damage output is just so high. Valkyrie's discretion picks up the kill. There's mounted archery, but Johnny just blinks on in. But TheFrenchEmperor is here as well, looking to try and chase it out, but Johnny is just able to get under the safety of the tower, leaving all of that expended out. emilitoo falling and no one else.
TheFrenchEmperor there showing exactly what Zhong can do. Blinks in, ults, and walks away. That's just about it, unfortunately. There was really not a lot of opportunity. It's very tough to get close enough to use your CC. You know, your slow and your stun are quite short range. When a fight is started, and TheFrenchEmperor, if they're a little bit earlier, might be some action in mid lane instead, though.
Ooh, sap. First time I think they've been under a lot of duress at this game. Zero's using the ult defensively, but in doing so, can't turn their attention to Sap 7 to put them down. And so in the end, Sap will get to walk away. And it is this pick again. Somehow Sap has just managed to sit on this AMC in mid, 0-0-0 for the first 10 minutes, and just gets to farm up. How does he do it?
Just farms up, does tons of damage. Hasn't even built that many items yet, of course, just pocketing a ton of gold in the process. I'm not really sure the why Zyrhoes wouldn't go for that kill. I think it might have finished Sap 7 off, but I suppose wanting to play it safe is Zyrhoes, not wanting to give up too much. Of course, only has this Transcendence, which is a decent amount of damage, but no Soul Eater to back it up. I think if there's already a second item online, surely you go for that. But, you know, playing it safe, as we've already said and already witnessed in game 1, you don't really win the game in the first 20 minutes. You know, it's all about what happens after that fact. It's just a case of how can you get to that later stage without being behind. And unfortunately, a 2-level lead for Johnny over TheFrenchEmperor. Zhong in the jungle, not really working out, so please don't bring it to my games. But Johnny on the Ratatoskr jungle certainly is working out, and Echrome might find out just how much right now.
Look at that. Yeah, so we can already see. Just look at this damage. Even if they dash on through, it's not going to matter. Wow. The Rat chases down through the ultimate. And even again, emilitoo throws out the wave. He waves goodbye to his ADC.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what we were talking about. What's the difference in jungles? Let's see what TheFrenchEmperor can do here, though, onto Julio with Deathwalker. Nothing.
And the answer is, he forced the ult, but there's the blink forward. Now Recall Demons is good. The slow is there, but just out of the range. They need 1 or 2 more. They will get it, but it takes a lot of work from Deathwalker. They're attacking up the tower. Meanwhile, that means that Hex Mambo, they can just go ahead and strip more of this jungle on the left side.
Yeah, you're giving up the left-hand side just for that pick, and it's not an entirely wasted pick. You know, Julio did have 2 kills already. Some more strength then coming out from French Emperor on the Zhong. We did see that was enough damage actually to get through this tier. Of course, hasn't managed to build into that magic defense just yet. Only starting off with the breastplate of regrowth and that Manticore spike. Sorry, Martichoras is the gone. Yeah, the Manticore spikes coming through early on. It's a bit of a greedy pick from Julio, but it already worked out quite well. So I can understand going for that, but still not planning on building into any of this magic defense means that French Emperor probably does have to pay all of their attention to this tier so far. I wonder if that would carry on into the late game stages, though. It's more about, for the Solo Scarabs, how can they keep Deathwalker and French Emperor relevant enough while Dzoni, Spudio, and Cozyx are just running the left-hand side of the map?
That's a good question at this point in time as Beacon goes down. It is Hex Mambo who will grab that one. And now, again, they are just looking to push up on this left-hand side. And we mentioned how, hey, this Freya is going to farm for 20 minutes and things and show up level 20. At this point, they are ahead of Echrome. That's a rare thing we don't get to see a lot, and that's all just due to this focus. So my question is now is, when do Hex Mambo look to try and pull that any further?
It's an interesting one, because Freya, while you would like Freya to be involved in all of the fights, Freya's not really going to do a good job of clearing a Gold Fury or clearing towers. By the way, when did that Gold Fury go on left? Did I miss that?
Yeah, I think I missed that as well.
It must have been during the fight on the right-hand side when Deathwalker and French Emperor were diving Julio. I completely flew under the radar for me. Didn't even witness it. But yeah, well, Spudio won't do the best job at clearing it. If you've got the space to do it, that's fine. But you don't want to be bringing Freya into an engagement where there's no real guaranteed fight. You know, the longer Freya can spend sitting in this left-hand side, it's exactly what Spudio wants to do. You know, just soaking up these waves, wants to hit level 20, have all of these rings bullying on her fingers. Then finally can actually show up and, you know, just end the fight before it even really begins. It will all just be a question of, can they bring this Freya into the fights without Deathwalker getting in the way? Because, of course, Nike's exactly who you want to deal with a Freya. But, you know, it will just be, how do these two polar opposites of the map square up against each other? Because Deathwalker's going to have their hands full with probably Dzoni, but also Sap 7 as well. You cannot rule out the B. This B already has the Jotuns and the Transcendence online. Hex Mambo pick up another objective in the blink of an eye. This is all bleeding away very, very quickly for the Solar Scarabs.
It feels like what happened in the last game, just obviously 10 minutes earlier, where you get that a little bit of a lead. It's like a 1k lead, then it's a 3k lead. The balloons into a 6k lead off the back of a huge team fight. And at this point in time, it does seem to be a case of Hex Mambo are starting to just cascade through the entire map, this left-hand side specifically. And you can see now, Solar Scarabs are trying to bring more members to bolster a defense, but I'm not sure how they win this 3v3.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one, because Cozy's just going to be the one to try and contend this purple buff. Notably, Echrome was still level 13 there for a while, but Zyrhoes falls down the mid lane. Dzoni says, you know what, it's not working in mid. In left, I'm just going to go mid instead. But now something is working in left.
As we do see, Deathwalker made a TP rotation in. It's a 4v2 situation. Summon Styx is there. Spudio gets clipped on the backside of it as well. And it's an all-in dive on for Spudio. Eventually they will fall down. Credit to a good Aegis there to buy them as much time as it did. The rest of Hex Mambo have to disengage. Fury is up, but with how much they've expended in, Scarabs cannot afford to stick around on it.
Yeah, it's a shame for the Scarabs. That would have been a real turning point in the game. If you can get that pick and get the Gold Fury, all of a sudden you're in a really good position. But instead, they commit Deathwalker all the way over, only get the one pick, and lose a lot of farm in the process. It might not be worth it overall. Echrome, though, in big danger.
Beats Aegis, and Echrome's got no ability to get away from this. Johnny's on a rampage. Nice to be able to say that one again at this late into the set. Finally, and so now things are starting to turn for Hex Mambo. Julio let to make any kind of big rotation, but how the rest of the game's going, he doesn't have to.
Yeah, like I said, the left-hand side of the map is going so well for Hex Mambo. All Julio has to do is stay there and make sure that Deathwalker and French Emperor can't really get involved. This Oni Fury just going away in the blink of an eye too. The Mambo are managing to get these objectives so fast because they're all rotating suddenly. They have the damage coming out from Sap 7 on this Muzen, who finally gets an assist to their name, by the way, with a Titan's Bane in the third slot. It's just going to mean that the burst damage potential potential from Sap is going to be ridiculously high now. And given that the Solar Scarabs haven't really been dueling with this Muzen, they might get surprised by it, but TheFrenchEmperor making a big rotation to the left. Summon Stick's just too high.
Just a little bit now, but Valkyrie's discretion is used very early on. They're going to chase down Spudio again. We've seen this play last time, and it is going to be a repeat of the last fight as well. So Solar Scarabs grabbed that, but look how much they invested in for it. Right. Spudio threw out an ult. They used 3 in exchange. You can't keep doing that.
It's so much commitment for just anything that then they have to really back it up to the Solar Scarabs, because Johnny's here now, and you have no way of dealing with this rat. You know, TheFrenchEmperor's trying to step up to this shield buff, but hold on. Cozy in some trouble as well. Has to double dash away. Finally, a little bit of a extended skirmish goes the way of the Solar Scarabs, though. It's still quite a large gold difference that they have to make up, but getting these small picks, getting these towers off the map, it's exactly what you need to do to try to find your window back into the game.
Just a touch as Sap and Zyrhoes looking to take a 1v1 just around this beacon, and Sap has played this so well. I mean, look how far they've been able to push Zyrhoes. They do get their beads forced by Emperor, but Johnny's going back on through, gets beads and the death from above and the ult from TheFrenchEmperor as well, and just says, hey, that's free. Look how scared of me you are.
I would have really liked that play if TheFrenchEmperor hold on to the ult there, because all of a sudden you've then got the potential to re-engage at any moment onto Sap, who all of a sudden can't feel so safe as they have been in this lane. You know, it would have been a real power play potential coming out, but instead commits the blink, commits the ult, has to run away, and yeah, not too much gain there for the Scarabs. And Johnny's more than happy to use that ult whenever they feel like it, you know, has a bit of cooldown in the build, and of course just wants to keep roaming this map, because this right now is where the Ratatoskr is at its strongest. You know, a sort of full build if you include the recipe, but surely won't last forever. But, you know, it has a ton of strength right now and really starting to throw his weight around is Johnny, already pushing up on this left-hand side. Echrome and TheFrenchEmperor don't feel comfortable stepping up, because why would you? This rat is just too dangerous to deal with.
And I guess it also answers that question for Bort of how do you rotate Freya to a fight? Well, you don't. You rotate the fight to the Freya, so she gets to farm and then fight at the same time. But like you said, all Julio's got to do is stop Deathwalker rotating in, and that's all that's really been happening right now. So that 3k lead is slowly, it's sort of mellowing itself out to about a 4k, 5k lead. But that pressure is just constantly going into Zyrhoes' face at this point in time. They're the only person who can really output a lot of damage, but they're still level 16, and with that gone, Hex Mambo will say, all right, Pyromancer's up next on the table. Deathwalker is here, and there is a bit more of an engagement going down. Sap clipped by the sticks, but that's all that's done as Julio rotates around the back. And now Hex Mambo is saying, right, you want to fight us? Okay, we out-survive you.
And notably here, the damage coming out from Zyrhoes is just nowhere near on the scale of what's coming out from Sap. You know, if you're looking at that, almost twice the amount of damage on the player damage charts for this Muzen Carb over the Martichoras. And it's an interesting one, because Marty has been, you know, a really difficult god for the past couple of months. You know, it's been a real top priority. The damage numbers people would consider to be just too high, but we noticed that, you know, Sap blasts the stinger into the face of Zyrhoes, who just takes up into the sky, but really didn't have the damage output that you're looking for. So we'll have to keep an eye on this Martichoras, see if they can pick it back up later on. Has gone for the fail knot, so not fully committing to just ability-based damage. Has a little bit of crit in there. I do wonder if it's going to really work itself out, though, because Sap really unfazed by this Martichoras, can run away from the slows quite quickly, has, of course, those beehives giving them so much regeneration and speed. The poke from Martichoras is just not effective in lane, so they'll have to try to output that damage onto Spudio and onto Johnny, but it's just not really working out so far. I think Zyrhoes might have to really pick their fights carefully if they want this Martichoras to work out.
Agreed, and just point out on the poke side of things, Sap doesn't have any lifesteal, doesn't have any sustain in the kit. They're relying on the HP 5 from hives. They are still sitting in most of these engagements at fairly high HP to start things off, and Zyrhoes has the sustain, has it in the passive, and is still taking an absolute beating every single engagement. Like, I look at this and I go, how do you get to do that on the most immobile ADC in the game? Just get to exist? How?
Yeah, completely unpunished. And I think that all comes down to the fact that French Emperor has picked up Zhong. You know, we had tons of other jungle picks available. Like, I mean, Thor. Thor would have been pretty good, right? Instead, didn't opt for that. Opted for this more late-game team fight-oriented pick. So, you know, maybe we'll see that coming out and coming to fruition later on. It just begs the question of why this needed to be picked up. You know, I mentioned Thor. Thor, of course, banned out this game, but other picks as well were available. I think they might have even picked the Zhong. It was the last pick, right? So they had full scope of, right, what does the other team have? And, you know, I don't really believe that French Emperor is like, guys, you know what slams here? Zhong. And everyone else going like, really? Like, I don't see it.
I have a feeling that it may have been, hey, Deathwalker, what do you want? I'll take Zhong. And then go, actually, Nike's kind of okay into this, and they kind of rope themselves into a corner. But I don't think that they would be in that position. Either way, the position that Solar Scarabs find themselves in is looking down. 3 Furies taken off the table in a row. We just saw Echrome try and steal it, but there's nothing they can do, and now we're seeing that 6,000 gold lead balloon itself into existence. Fire Giant surely got to be looking at the ire of both of these teams for very different reasons.
Yeah, I'm sure Hex Mambo are going to be bringing Spudio in, and in fact, yeah, we can see Spudio on the right-hand side of the map, I believe for the first time, actually makes their way to this fire. So definitely the port of call for Hex Mambo and Solar Scarabs. They don't really have a lot they can do about it, you know? It'll have to be a team fight where you're witnessing them being low, but, I mean, already the Fire Giants at half.
It's under half at this point in time. Deathwalker blinks on through, has to cause a distraction at this point in time. Fire Giant gets stolen away. Solar Scarabs grab it, and now they're looking to try and take an engagement. This is the closest thing to an even fight they've got. Echrome still on the way on through. Dzoni, though, took the time and finds emilitoo round the back. But now Echrome looking to try and find any damage they can. Spudio takes down French Emperor, and Solar Scarabs, they've been hoisted by their own petard, suffering from their own success here. They steal Fire Giant and think it gives them the chance to fight. Hex Mambo say otherwise.
It all came down to Echrome right then at the end, goes in on the mounted archery to try and sweep up these last couple of kills. If that's used defensively and Solar Scarabs get out with 3 people alive with Fire Giant, you'd say it's totally worth it, totally worth the investment. Now they've lost most of their Fire Giant picks. Zyrhoes loses the ultimate in mid lane as well. This Titan will be barreling in. We'll soon see this tier 2 tower being under pressure. Julio's going nuts up front. Hold on, might have stepped a bit too far up, but Solar Scarabs are going to be just reeling from that loss because they had a big victory in them, but they tried to just take even more after the fact. And it just not really worth it. I think Hex Mambo will be more than happy to give up that Fire Giant because it did cost so much for the Solar Scarabs. And look, relics just all off the board. Only Zyrhoes with the Aegis Amulet left up. It's just so expensive of a commitment. It does get you some gold back, but you know, at this point, Hex Mambo are just going to keep running it down and just do what they do because it's been working fine, and now they don't even have to worry about the Fire Giant.
I certainly don't at this point. Actually, could we just have a quick peek at the graphs? I want to see that minor blip for the Hex Mambos, just what it ends up looking like on the graph. Because like you said, you lose... Yeah, look at that. It's like, it's down and then right back up to there. I'm not even sure if it's the little blip or the slightly bigger dip just before the 25-minute mark. Like, that's just how it looks at this point in the game. Because Hex Mambo... They were the ones who were on full retreat in that fight. It's Dzoni who sits up long enough to buy enough time to take out emilitoo. And as soon as that's gone, remember what you said last game, how this front line from Hex Mambo, when it was the Atlas and the Nike, it doesn't look like there's much CC for peel. The same thing kind of applies here. Deathwalker's not peeling. emilitoo's not peeling. If you get into the back line, someone is dying before you can get rid of them.
Yeah, you get down deep. Like we saw just then, there was the grouping for Hex Mambo around the Fire Giant. They just sort of realized, okay, we're all quite low, but between us all, we can't get picked off. And then, yeah, Echrome took the bait, you know, could see a low health Terra and just decided, I reckon I can finish that off. But no, you can't get out after the fact. Even if that pick had gone their way, I don't think Solar Scarabs would be happy trading out Echrome there. Now, Deathwalker lifted up into some CC, but it is just a retreat from Hex Mambo, setting up for this Primal Fury, because all they want to do is extend this lead even further. Solar Scarabs had their little moment in the sun, but now it's going to, I mean, it's convinced them that they want to take this fight at the objective instead as well, but they'll have to try a bit better. Their team fight's pretty good. Can they stop that team fight, though, when it is maybe at its losing stages and running out of some steam?
Potentially. There is still Fire Giant on Zyrhoes and Deathwalker, so they can play around with that a little bit. It's not a perfectly even situation, but it is about the best they're going to get. Well, I say that. The last one was the best they're going to get. Now this is the best they're going to get, which is even worse. So, Primal Fury, Hex Mambo, like you said, they've got a little bit of sustain. They can go ahead and just hold this off. Everyone else can start coming into the late stages. Spudio level 20. They've gone for the Beyonce build. They like it, and they've put every single ring potentially on it. Is Deathwalker the one who just steps too far forward? Where were the rest of Solar Scarabs? What just happened there is now everyone's on full retreat, but they're all going in on Zyrhoes. Pete is good to avoid the knockup. Aegis buys him a little more time, but Julio just runs them down. Nice double whoop as well, just picking members off one by one, and it's Dzoni who gets the double.
Yeah, fantastic play again from the Mambo. They've recognized that they had an opportunity in that center pit where Deathwalker's just stepped up alone. And, you know, this Nike gone for a somewhat strange build, actually. Not a whole lot of defense. Has the Prophetic Cloak, of course, but nowhere near finishing all of the stacks off that. And actually gone for a serrated edge later on. I'm just fully convinced that this should have been a Nike jungle with the Zhong and solo. I think that would have made a lot more sense and been a lot easier for the Solar Scarabs to pull off, because TheFrenchEmperor is just a bit of a non-factor, and that's a real shame to say, because they had a decent game. Game number one was everywhere they needed to be, but in this game can't get involved just by virtue of the pick. You know, I feel like TheFrenchEmperor's done what they could. They've been in the right positions for these fights, but unless you're going all in, you have to be going all out. And unfortunately for the Solar Scarabs, Deathwalker's all in, the rest are all out, and that just bleeds itself over into more and more kills, and possibly another Fire Giant attempt from Hex Mambo, because they're already there, already have the positioning. More battle come through, but the Solar Scarabs aren't going to be winning this fight.
Certainly not, as even now you can see Dzoni just doing the diligent jungler thing. I'm going to push up mid, look for potential loop around here. Solar Scarabs, they're warding. It's all defensive. All of their sentry wards are in their own jungle, potentially looking to try and avoid any loop shenanigans here. As Fire Giant put to about half health. Solar Scarabs are here, but Hex Mambo want the fight more than the fire.
Yeah, looping around wherever they can, and Dzoni brings in, dashes right back out, but the chase comes in from the Scarabs.
And even so, just look at that. Dzoni goes in, gets the ult, disengages. Cozy's the one who eats the brunt of the force, but a whoop on emilitoo puts them incredibly low. Dzoni still has the ultimate, and like we said, they find the target. They will tear them down. Valkyrie's discretion does so first. TheFrenchEmperor finds the tier who is frontlining for the rest of this, but Dzoni's divine, picking off another 2 members as Hex Mambo. They don't care about the fire. They could go back and get fire. If they get one more pick, they could potentially just look to end here. They'll find TheFrenchEmperor as Dzoni with another double here over Divine. 10, 1, and 5. This is the Dzoni we expected to see.
Yeah, Dzoni sits there up on the Yggdrasil, just waiting for the key moment. There you can see there was a fight going on. Julio actually fell in that engagement, or was pretty close in their fight as well, this small little skirmish. But all Dzoni recognizes, hey,
are they waiting?
This is going elsewhere. I can focus on someone else. But Deathwalker in some trouble. Oh my goodness.
That's insane. This whoop into stun, into stinger combo is absolutely melting members. I thought they were waiting for Julio, but no, they were waiting to bait Deathwalker in. And now Dzoni just trying to buy time, find members of the rest of Solar Scarabs. They find Zyrhoes, trying to steal away a beacon. They get fire on everyone. They don't even care about the beacon at this point in time. There's a mid-Phoenix to be taken.
Barreling up the mid lane now is Dzoni. Does a ton of damage onto Zyrhoes, who thought they were being cheeky and ended up paying the ultimate price for it. Looks like the mid lane Phoenix will be the call, but Solar Scarabs need to be careful. They're bleeding away so many kills and just falling for this whoop combo all the time.
Not again! Not again! The whoop into stun, into stinger, and no one can survive it. emilitoo down for another 50 seconds as there's a drip feed in for both kills and the defense side of things here. Hex Mambo, they don't even care about waiting for anything else. Julio trying to just see if they can pad up some stats there, but Dzoni went and pushed up this right-hand or this left-hand side. Now they're just going to barrel on through without any need for Phoenixes because that's an enhanced fire giant. They can just do that now.
Yeah, it just walks in, a few shots, the double AD combo, of course, Sap on this Muzen has just been hitting hard throughout the entire game. Look at the gap in player damage, Blur. We've seen what Dzoni has been doing, but look at the 36,000 stinger damage from Sap 7. That's death by 36,000 bees coming on through. And when you're constantly taking this sort of poke with no sustain in the comp from Solar Scarabs, right, you're just seeing the weaknesses of all of these characters shown so brightly, and Johnny's just there to clean up. You know, Dzoni has these 11 kills and has barely had to do any damage for it. Mind you, doing plenty of damage in the process. We saw how quickly people like Zyrhoes have been dying. Even emilitoo just there had some shots in from Spudio, who's had a quiet game, but only because they haven't had to do any more than that. And once the opportunity showed through, they've just been whooping people into this Terra combo, and combined with all the other damage around it, it's no surprise that this game is going the way it is. But you just wonder why Hex Mambo didn't do this game one. A lot of this was available to them. Of course, the Muzen was banned by the Solar Scarabs, and I expect it will be banned in game number 3 as well. I can't imagine that will be left through if we get to that stage. But yeah, right now, Solar Scarabs are in just, you know, absolute do-or-die moment, and that's why you see them grouping, hoping to just take their last engagement.
Now they've got 2 sets of Oni fire waves pushing into the Titan. If this fight spills on long enough, those minions will just take the Titan itself, as the fight on right is where everything sits here. Stygian summoned and does absolutely nothing. Spudio in the backline is the focus of attention, but they dip themselves out far enough, and Hex Mambo can now re-aggress with Dzoni leading the charge. It's a knock up onto Zyrhoes with no beads, no Aegis, and no health bar to follow it up. A great push through. Spudio claims credit for that one. A surrender vote has started. It's a double kill for Spudio here as they just continue to run it down. And like I said, minions are the only thing needed to take that. All Hex Mambo needed was time to do so. In 21-5 in 33 minutes, Hex Mambo looked back on form.
Yeah, Solar Scarabs there, like I said, trying to take their last engagement. Didn't even have the chance to. It seemed like before they were even ready to spring that trap, it was just too late for them. And yeah, Hex Mambo really just ran through it. You know, had a great time just running at the enemy team, did whatever they needed to do. And yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised to see that from them. I'm just surprised we didn't see it game number 1. So I have to see what both sides managed to bring to game number 2.
Yeah, well, they brought a hell of a lot more aggression to it, especially Hex Mambo's side of things. I think we can both safely say if Zhong is going to be picked up, it's not going back into the jungle.
Probably not.
And at this point, Solar Scarabs have got some shattered remains of their hope and mentality, hopefully, to pick up from this game, which means we're going to go to a break, and then we'll be back with the final game of the set.
Say that life's too short to be holding this tight. So why am I walking light? And in this world of light and color, I'm not afraid of the night. When this future's so bright, yeah, I got all these friends and we're like, it's not the end. Whoa, this new world is ours. This new world is ours, and all these friends, and we're like, it's not the end. Whoa, this new world is ours. This new world is ours. This new world is ours. too short, and I can feel in my bones the horizon is close now, now, now. And the world's been changing lately, but after the storm we come out strong now, now. And I got all these friends, and we're like, it's not the end. Whoa, this new world is ours. This new world is ours. And all these friends, and we're like, it's not the end. Whoa, this new world is ours. This new world is ours.
Well, here we are then, folks, back for one more matchup here between the Solar Scarabs and Hex Mambo. Game number one, kind of a snooze fest, you know, 20 minutes of meticulous farming into one team fight that just obliterates the entire game. Game number two, we get massive obliteration of the entire game from minute one, and what, it was like for the first 4 minutes we had Judas was like a kill a minute. So whether or not we see something similar, like how do Solar Scarabs even begin to fight back into that kind of a play style?
Well, we mentioned at the end of game one or at the start of game two that it felt like Hex Mambo was sort of waiting for their time to shine, and instead they just brought it in the second game. I think if you are Solar Scarabs, you need to try to bring it to that slow-paced game again. Take away things like the Ratatoskr, take away the Thor, and make sure that Dzoni can't get aggressive. But, you know, props go to Hex Mambo for recognizing what the problem was. You know, they realized, oh, if we just wait till late game, we're almost coin flipping it. Let's play our game, get aggressive early on. And we saw, you know, those plays from Dzoni right away. And I think even Dzoni got first blooded. Like, that's the crazy thing.
He did.
Actually died right at the start of the game and just shook that off and then just took over the rest of it. But the big thing that the Solar Scarabs have to do, have to ban our Muzen Carb. You cannot leave that open. The other thing you have to do and I'm gonna say this very slowly, very readily, so that everyone understands. Do not pick Zhong jungle. And then we're okay.
There we go. There we go. Caster of EU caster of the year right there with that analysis. I gotta agree with you. I think if you're gonna pick it, it needs to go to Deathwalker again, because it made we looked at that and think, oh yeah, it makes more sense. It's sustain, you can show up into the middle of a team fight, it works like a Chang'e, everything made sense. And then the game didn't make sense. So hopefully Game 3's picks and bans will look a little bit more what we're used to in that side of things, and we'll go ahead and get into those when we can. But for my money, I think it is, like you said, it is what is Dzoni playing, and we said that for the entirety of the last split. It looks like we're going to be saying it for the entirety of this phase as well. Dzoni is the momentum key for this team. Whatever Dzoni is playing, if they play well, if they can make a lot of impact in the early game, the team will carry it through to the late game.
Yeah, and you want that to be a high priority. And of course, the jungler that comes up against it, I thought TheFrenchEmperor did fine on the Daji. It was a quiet game for the junglers. I would have loved to see a pick like that come back. I probably would have preferred the Charon jungle that you touched on before that game as well. Just something with the potential to stand up to the opposing jungler when needed. That was the big thing that was keeping Dzoni quiet in game 1 is, Johnny's probably thinking, if I do want to dive and commit onto someone, got to be sure it works, because there'll be a Daji just looking to punish you. And that's sort of how you have to play against a jungler like Dzoni, right? We've seen Dzoni take over tons and tons of games by themselves. Certainly not in a situation where the rest of the team can't back him up at the moment. The whole Hex Mambo lineup is so strong, but you really need to deal with Dzoni early on. And I think banning away this Muzen carb, like I mentioned, absolutely necessary. You cannot give this pick to Sap, or at least if you plan on winning the game. So already off the table, Magical Hunters mostly off the table as well. Going to be a bit of a different draft this time, and I'm excited to see what comes out from it.
Likewise, I mean, we've got things like Sun Wukong, Kamazots, we've got Charon, Chernobog, most notably, one who has, since the 10.9 buffs, pretty much become undisputably the best hunter in the game, right?
Yeah, it's been something that's been so highly prioritized, even coming into the current patch in the SPL week as well, still a high priority pick. So Chernobog, with that, of course, global presence, can be really tough to deal with at the best of times. But even in the current meta as well, the map is so wide, there's so much importance on the moment at winning a specific side of the map. You tend to find that one side it gets controlled by one team and the other side gets controlled by the other team. Chernobog can really disrupt that, especially if they have the space to farm up. Like we've seen these last 2 games, the dual lane has been so quiet. That's why there's been this prioritization on gods like Freya or Hachiman to get you to that late game and not be concerned about it. But the Solar Scarabs seem hell-bent on picking this Charon Martichoras combination. It just seems to be something that's really confident in. But this time we're seeing the Sun Wukong picked up by Hex Mambo, and I think we'll be finding out why this god gets banned away so much.
Agreed. It's so much lane pressure. So difficult to try and deal with. There's no bullying out the Sun Wukong. You just kind of have to outlive it. It almost feels like going back to the old days when Bakasura was super popular in solo. You had like Hercules and Osiris because you weren't there to win. You were there to just survive long enough to try and win. As Agni picked up here, Sap 7. This for me is their magical equivalent or mage equivalent of the Muzen carp. It just looks so good on them. Every time we've seen it played, it always looked good, and hopefully we'll get to see something similar for this. This Ymir ban away, this has been one that's been slightly bothering me. It has been in every single game against Cozy. What is it about Ymir that Scarabs do not like?
I mean, look, there always must be, this is one of the rules of Smite, there must be an EU support that is just absolutely cracked on Ymir at all times. At the moment, it seems like that might be Cozy. I haven't seen it played at SPL or anything, so not too surprising to see it come here. Someone has to do it. Someone has to be the title of the best current Ymir player. But I like the Terra ban specifically because the Terra was just fantastic. Of course, doesn't have the setup from Freya this time, but didn't really need it, did Cozy last time. It handled it so well. But I do agree with what you're saying with the Agni for Sap. It is this long-range artillery-style mage coming through. Not not quite the same properties though throughout the entire game. Like of course in the team fight, we'll do very, very similar roles, but it won't allow you to take these quick Gold Furies that we saw. I mean, we literally didn't see one of the Gold Furies go down, didn't even notice it because it was killed so fast. And that was with a Freya and an Muzen card. Obviously quite different now, having Hachiman, Agni certainly don't have that fast objective pressure anymore. But Ratatoskr coming back through for Mambo. I'm not too surprised, I suppose. Solar Scarabs didn't want to just ban it out because there's so much more that could be there. But the Hades coming through, Hades is exactly what you want to stand up against the Sun Wukong.
Assuming, of course, that this is not Hades' jungle.
Don't even start.
Look, at least Erlang Shen lore-wise should deal with some Wukong, because those two did fight, and the 72 transformations were matched 72 for 72 for Erlang. So, you know, in mythology, it makes sense. In gameplay, it's more likely going to be the Hades, which makes a lot more sense. But this Athena now coming through for Cozy, this is one of those gods that I'm surprised somehow always makes it through to like 10th pick in these kind of comps, because Athena has just become so impactful with all of the buffs she's got.
Yeah, Athena, one of those gods that has been super powerful lately. I'm not really sure why it's been so ignored so far this set, but what Athena does so well is just set up the front line of the enemy team to just be killed off. And Charon, particularly vulnerable to this sort of thing. You know, when you want to roll away and use your escape as a Charon, it's very, very telegraphed, very easy to taunt you out of that. So certainly, emilitoo will have to play this one carefully. But even Deathwalker and French Emperor as well, you can't be too careful around this Athena. So we'll have to see exactly how well the Mambo are able to follow up.
That we will, and this is what it all comes down to here. A best of 3 turned best of 1 final matchup between the Solar Scarabs and the Hex Mambo. It's even now, but someone's coming away with a victory here. And looking at these two comps, I mean, Dzoni got the Ratatoskr again. I want to see Dzoni pop off again in this third game.
I think with Dzoni being on the Ratatoskr and, of course, Sun Wukong coming out for Julio, it again spells to me that the Mambo are going to look to play on this solo side of the map. It worked really well for them last game. They were invading these blue buffs early on, and Erlang Shen, not one of those gods that really stands up well early on. You know, those early phases, the early first 10 minutes or so, there's really not going to be a whole lot of damage coming out, so we'll, you know, have to keep an eye on exactly how well they're able to deal with that.
That we will. Let's go ahead and jump on into that final game here. Solar Scarabs looking to go ahead and get themselves in. They've been looking for this double hunter comp for the entire time. Zyrhoes has always been on this Martichoras, and it's been, I think, lackluster, the best way to say it. We'll see whether Echrome moving from this Hachi to this Chernobog has as big of an impact. But at the very least, TheFrenchEmperor is on what we would consider the correct pick.
Yeah, I mean, there's never necessarily a correct pick, but I do know that Zhong was an incorrect pick. So I'm happy to see something that's much more consistent. A lot of people have had, you know, a lot of opinions over Erlang Shen as well, not being seen to be particularly strong since having the knockup removed on that 72 transformations. But, you know, it's still a god that can go well later on. Of course, that 9 turns blessing, potentially game-changing, you know. However, Cozy has one of those on like an 8-second cooldown, so maybe you need to pay some close attention to this Athena as well. I'm interested to see if Zyrhoes can make this Martichoras work, because like you said, it's really been underwhelming so far, but we know that that's not the capacity for Martichoras. We've seen this god go crazy in certain games and have the space they need. But I think Saps just had the answer for it generally throughout these laning phases. But we'll see how it stands up against Agni, and if Dzoni can maybe not fall down to First Blood 2 at this time.
Hopefully, it's Saps the first one to get in a little bit of trouble, pinned in place, but thankfully already has the dash here. And it does seem again that Solar Scarabs have that reminiscence from Game 1, emilitoo pushing incredibly far forward. Good bit of Bloody Box CC right there. It is effectively just a route to stand in front of someone, but as it looks, Solar Scarabs have a little bit of pressure out in duo lane, and mid lane seems to be split even for now, but hey, there is a shield buff up. At least one of these junglers seems to have their attention focused that way. Meanwhile, Dzoni wants to try and put this Hades down. Does Deathwalker sniff it out? Looks like they might. At the very least, yes, Deathwalker patient enough not to push up on the wave.
Yeah, Johnny, of course, like I mentioned, surely wants to prioritize this right-hand side of the map. There is ever so slightly less farm over here, so you really have to make it pay off through lane pressure and also blue buff invades. Right now, not really working out, but they did get the cooldown buff for themselves. And, you know, if Deathwalker is surely not going to lose lane, as, you know, Hades, it's basically impossible to do that, but you really want to make it so that this Hades is as killable as possible when you get to these later stages. You know, you need a lot of time to build up all the proper lifesteal that you need to enable yourself to survive through a Pillars of Agni for, you know, more than just a second or two. Right now, we're seeing French Emperor just play things standard, you know, looking for the buffs where they want to be. Will give up that right side mid camp because that means there will be space to secure a blue buff on the right hand side for this Hades. That, you know, doesn't need it necessarily, but certainly will want the farm. But again, something we've seen consistently throughout this set is the Solar Scarabs taking the dual pressure. Just no matter what ADC they've got nearby, it must just be Charon dishing out the numbers.
I mean, that's the only thing that's been consistent throughout the lot of them, so that may very well be the case for it. And emilitoo certainly doing a good job. No punishment of getting pulled into tower this time. I think that's an important one from game one difference. So that's at least nice to see. And Solar Scarab so far, I meing, game is going about similar pace as game one, which does incline that this could go later and things. My question then is this Hades and Sun Wukong, they're both very aggressive in lane. How is that going to transition out towards the team fight? But we'll hold that a sec. Johnny goes on through with the ultimate, looking to find emilitoo. The dash is there, and the stun is catching them. They're being CC'd to hell and back, but Echrome is the squishier of the two. So will be turned back to attention. French Emperor, though, Blink does not catch anyone with the ultimate, though the damage is there. And Cozy gets taken down. French Emperor with another first blood.
French Emperor on the late rotation, exactly what you needed. Would have liked to have been there a bit earlier, of course, but it does mean that they're in the perfect position to sweep up the kills. And, Zyrhoes getting very low, should just about be alive. But we're seeing there the strength of Charon here. Actually, I believe had the dash caught earlier on. So it was just a bit of a sitting duck. Johnny feeling like they had an opportunity to go for a kill too, commits through the Cosmos, then able to just row on back to safety as emilitoo. And, you know, good awareness from the other members of the Solar Scarabs to try to get emilitoo back to safety, including Echrome hits a double root as well, which, you know, it's always nice sometimes when the carry will peel for the support. You know, it's not always witnessed, especially not in a game that doesn't have the word competitive in front of it. So it's nice to see when these players are able to work together properly like that, because, you know, you can't afford to give up anything cheap. And, you know, Hex Mambo had to commit so much, it ends up costing them this early first blood. And I think you'd be very, very happy if you're the Solar Scarabs to see that on the French Emperor.
Agreed, because now they've got themselves that gooseberries, plus they've also got themselves the golden blades. So they are effectively free clearing every single camp. They can also do very effectively into any kind of body blocks. That's always one for me that's annoying, is you'll body block for someone and then they'll still die. You're like, what the? Oh, golden blade splash damage. And then it's really awkward because now you have to space even further away from protection, which means you're easier to pick off.
Yeah, it's going to mean that French Emperor will have lots of opportunities to dish out their damage. It's all a case of if they can survive. But the good news for French Emperor is if there is no taunt coming out from Cozy, it means that they're going to have a pretty good window. It's only really Johnny with a solid hard CC. That's the Night Chain's Blessing right into the Defender of Olympus, though. But the Summon Styx comes out, and this is looking good for the Solar Scarabs.
It is. Johnny's up in the sky, though. Ooh. Huge stun from Sap7. Buys a little bit of time, but Cozy has realized they are dead to rights here, so we'll go ahead and just pull everyone else away from the rest of the team. Best to do if you can, but that's a second kill for French Emperor now, and turns out that bigger might just be better when it comes to these taunts, because, I mean, hey, one is 2-0, the other is 0-2, so that's got to mean something.
I mean, it must be something. I'd say this Athena maybe not being prioritized so much because it just seems that the teams are dealing with it really well. Like, Solar Scarabs have not been concerned yet. I think French Emperor getting 2 kills onto Cozy is just going to be fantastic because Athena's real strength is this early stage with this global presence. But you know, it's not the same sort of global presence that the Solar Scarabs have access to, because Echrome, of course, looking to rotate to where someone else is going to be. But you're the ones on the front foot with that, right? You would get to decide where are we rotating to. Whereas Cozy has to rotate to an ally. So while Echrome and Cozy's targets are the same, it's actually the difference of where you want to be proactive or you're going to have to be reactive to it. And unfortunately, Cozy's been in the right places, but it's just not worked out so far. I suppose if you are the support, you'd rather find yourself falling in lieu of someone else falling down. But I don't know, at the moment, I think you just need to be careful. Not quite tanky yet, but a big grouping on the left-hand side.
It is. Blink, two-man taunt on through. Cozy again seems to be the focus here. They will get to dash on away. As Emperor now looking to try and chase it out, but tanky enough this time to be able to survive that one. And Dzoni with backup in tow. Solar Scarabs do not overextend like they did in that game 2 with the Fire Giants. So instead, they'll just go ahead and happily accept, hey, it's shield buff, and we are back to game 1 mentality.
Yeah, you know, scrapping over a shield buff is always worthwhile, especially if we play in EU. At least this time, we've had a couple of kills to come through. Oh, tons of damage onto Zyrhoes. You might be in some trouble.
Johnny also going up into the sky. Zyrhoes will be landing first and then immediately having their beads forced in tow. Echrome, though, with the rotation means Johnny does get away. Deathwalker's here as well, pushing 3 members out of the way. Johnny has to blink to try and disengage from everyone, but they're going to get run down unless they get the dart. But no, pinned in place means a 3rd kill for the French Emperor.
French Emperor having an absolute storming game this time. Look what happens when you don't pick Zhong. Well, we nearly had it in him. I'm still on that one. I will not get off of that one. Don't forget, I also had to cast Sam for Soccer last season with the Agni and Scylla jungles. I'm fed up of this. I want to see some good old, classic Erlang Shen. Yeah, there's an Agni that time too. I want to see some Erlang Shen run in Riot. This is what I was talking about earlier in Picks and Bans. It's all about if this Erlang Shen can get to a stage where they can put their damage out. And right now, yeah, the early phase, the early 10 minutes that I discussed, where I was expecting Dzoni and Julio to be playing on the right-hand side of the map, just haven't materialized. French Emperor has managed to get past this window of weakness, and all of a sudden is putting out some of the highest damage in the game. And you know, it's really on Hex Mambo to deal with this, because they've been making these attempts at plays and getting aggressive, but not in situations that have taken into account the fact that French Emperor can just show up and finish you off. And it all comes down to what these side lanes can do now. The support and jungle are struggling for Hex Mambo, but you do still have Spudio, who is more than safe and able to get away from this Erlang Shen if it does go too crazy. But Julio not going to be able to do too much to it. It's all about if they can dive further, dive better, and if Snap 7 can put out enough damage to threaten this Erlang Shen from running any further. But the shutdown gold is there. You know, if the Hex Mambo are able to take it, is it that sweet spot of the 3 kills? Now you can claim them, because now they're worth some money to kill. But I don't know. I just don't see it. The way French Emperor's played, they're showing up late to these engagements, not being the one to start it, unless absolutely safe to do so. I think at the moment, French Emperor is showing why Erlang Shen maybe should still be considered.
Agreed, and with this build as well, now you can't even out-tank them with the Executioner in tow, which means as well, if Zyrhoes is around, they're going to do more damage. If Echrome is around, they're going to do more damage. It's almost like playing a triple hunter comp here. As Echrome beats are forced, they'll dash through the Stygian summoned, as Echrome is very low, and the shell will not be able to save them, nor will any meditation come through. Emilitoo now looking to try and get back to the rest of the team. French Emperor is the target, and look at how much damage Johnny does. Absolutely melted the health bar there. A triple kill for Spudio, and Johnny sets it all up.
Johnny starts that fight, and the fight continues on as well under this tier 1 tower. Spudio for the Quadra does get it. Fantastic. Deathwalker too far away for the pentakill to be considered. But that was exactly what Hex Mambo needed. Their first 4 kills of the game all onto one Spudio, and that's exactly what you would have wanted. But that doesn't even tie them up in gold. There was a significant gap that the Solar Scarabs had. And unfortunately, I'd mentioned there, French Emperor had been playing well and keeping safe, not really giving up their bounty, but spent so much time in that fight committing to sap, which, understandable, right? This Agni, untouched so far, had been, dishing out quite a lot of damage over the backside, but it's so hard to chase down an Agni. That was the first time we'd seen French Emperor engage onto a backliner, And it really didn't work out, you know. It is still the Erlang Shen not doing quite the amount of damage that is needed. Luckily for Echrome, not finding themselves too far behind, but about half a level behind their opposing numbers. So Spudio not quite going to go out of control, and Hachiman not the type to really take over a game, but Solar Scarabs receive a big bloody nose there, and certainly going to have to readjust in how they take these next few engagements.
Agreed, and it was all just about who, you know, you said before, it's the active versus reactive. It's whether it's offensive or defensive. And in that instance, Echrome was all on the defense. Everything from Solar Scarabs was here, as now Dzoni gets to just walk into an engagement that they want to take. Emperor goes for an ultimate, and the combo seems to be pull someone in with the taunt and then immediately fear them off afterwards. But it does mean that they're with the 4 members here. Solar Scarabs will be getting themselves the beacon. First rotation from Deathwalker in, and it is just for the numbers at this point, but that means Julio gets a free wave into tower and can potentially look to see if they can get anything else.
Yeah, it seemed to be all about the beacon there, but we did see FrenchEmperor stepping up a bit too aggressively, did get taunted into all the damage from Sap. And then, you know, Dzoni was looping around. If Dzoni takes a slightly different angle, that might be an easy opportunity. But hold on. Hex Mambo going for a fast gold Fury. No one anywhere nearby. Not even sure the Solar Scarabs were fully aware that was happening. All of a sudden, you know, Beacon traded out for a gold Fury. It's not quite the trade you want to be making. Solar Scarabs need to be careful they don't let this one slide too quickly.
I believe, though, that they actually had Solar Scarabs had Oracle Vision on it. They just couldn't get enough manpower in to put up a defense. It's not unwilling. It's just unable at that point in time, or vice versa, whichever you would think it sounds better on it. But Echrome now looking to try and get some more crit online, get that CDR, whereas we can see Spudio looking to get that Kins, and makes a lot of sense. These health bars may be tall. They're not wide in tanky stats right now, as Dzoni looking to go aggressive on this right-hand side. Deathwalker beads us away a little bit and just gets out of the range of the stun, or the taunt, excuse me. And so we'll be able to live another day. But there are 4 members roaming around. Hex Mambo have gone from left to right in a swathe, and they just delete members off the map.
They're completely unaware that Sap had made the rotation, and they're looking to dive the FrenchEmperor.
There's a wave, but they can't. FrenchEmperor can't get towards it. So instead, once again, they'll wave goodbye to any chance of pressure over on this right-hand side. Mid lane is being looked at, but it's just not going down quick enough with these 4 members as well from Hex Mambo. They're just going to go up for the Pyromancer.
Yeah, I like that decision from Hex Mambo. You've recognized we probably might lose the mid-tier one, but even so, we don't really care. There is a Pyromancer available, but it's a great rotation from Sap that I think Solar Scarabs just were completely unaware of. Had no idea that that might happen and managed to secure the Pyromancer, do Hex Mambo too. It's just been a good 5-minute period for Hex Mambo. I'm not quite sure where it all went wrong for the Solar Scarabs, but I bet it had something to do with that quadra kill for Spudio. It just means that the momentum sort of got knocked out of the sails of the Solar Scarabs because Spudio hasn't been involved on these fights over on the right-hand side of the map. It's just a case of Mambo feeling confident that they can step forward. Deathwalker not recognizing that there was a potential rotation from Agni, who's doing tons of damage now, by the way. Sap 7 really dishing it out, no matter what pick they seem to be on. So it's all about what the Solar Scarabs can do to re-engage into this, because I think they've been sort of reacting to these fights, haven't got Echrome involved at all with that Living Nightmare so far. It would have been a perfect time to use it to rotate to that right-hand side fight, but opted not to. Again, the fight was over before they maybe would have recognized there was a situation. But Deathwalker might be in trouble again.
Dzoni, again, just making the rotation. This global presence and pressure is just strong enough. All 3 ultimates will be expended to take down Deathwalker. And that feels like a overcommitment, but at the same time, what are Scarabs going to do to punish it?
Nothing. They've got nothing. There's no objectives on the map. The tier 1 tower in mid is the weakest, but Sap is right there to defend it. No concern at all. Emilitoo gets pulled in.
A good chunk of damage as well now coming through from Sap. This penetration online for them. Every item in their build has some kind of penetration outside of the starter item, but I think if a starter item had pen, I think the game might be that might be the most broken item in the game. But either way, now we can see this feels a lot like game 2. That pressure from Hex Mambo is starting to spill into the jungle.
Yeah, we're seeing Dzoni now about a level and a half lead over FrenchEmperor. Complete flip side to what we were expecting earlier on. Don't forget, at one point, TheFrenchEmperor was 3-0 and absolutely running the show, and now finds themselves on a passive stance. They can't engage, of getting taunted on again. Look at this!
Whoa! There's one Agni bomb there did that much damage. That is a shell as well being expended to keep the TheFrenchEmperor alive. They've got themselves some protection in the form of this phalanx, but that is physical protection, which they're not really fighting into a lot of, and Sap's just melting the health bar all the way through. So now if TheFrenchEmperor is kind of Hex Mambo's target to stop any major fights going in Scarabs' way, who's picking up the slack?
Yeah, that's all the big question, right? Like, how are we going to find it elsewhere? We really haven't seen a lot of involvement from Deathwalker on Deathwalker's terms, you know? It's all been aggression into them on the solo lane. Maybe we'll start to see something show up, of course, with this Oni Fury spawning. All the positioning is with Hex Mambo, as they do have the positioning around this beacon as well. Deathwalker's already here, and looks like Julio is as well around the backside. Finally, it looks like Scarabs looking to make a stand as 5, but Hex Mambo not at all interested in taking part. I've actually managed to bring Echrome into the game finally too, but Spudio able to make this rotation. Looks like Hex Mambo will be looking at this Gold Fury.
And they will. Johnny's already started this one up, and this is just how Hex Mambo love to play this map. They will play, you know, they're playing aggressively into the mid. They're not backing away super quickly. Whereas Hex Mambo now just get Oni Fury. They'll trade out tier 1 tower, but what's a tier 1 tower in this instance? Now Scarabs, they're going to swathe over towards the Fire Giant, but realize, no, we can't really do that. Hex Mambo just get a completely uncontested and free objective.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the thought process was there. I understand Hex Mambo deciding to give that up, give up the Gold Fury and just take the tier 1 tower in mid, but I think they were waiting on that Pyromancer that just didn't arrive quickly enough for them. Now the Mambo looking to take it instead. Deathwalker wants to get involved. We might finally see a scrap.
We certainly might, but unfortunately Pyromancer's the first thing to go down, and Scarabs, they just feel like they're listing at this point. Like, they'll show up to a bit, and then they'll just kind of exist there, and then back it away. Hex Mambo have all 3 lanes under their dominance. They've got all parts of the jungle seemingly under their dominance here, and it's only a 5k gold lead.
It's still not insurmountable for the Scarabs. It's just, again, it feels like the momentum has really shifted against them. Like, it's not always a tangible thing, but TheFrenchEmperor coming out 3-0 must have been feeling really good and feeling like they could take down anyone. But then that huge fight over on the left-hand side for Hex Mambo, where Spudio picks up a quadra kill. All of a sudden, Spudio had been maybe under some pressure on this Hachiman, not feeling like they could get involved. So they can just start throwing their weight around. Hasn't even needed to, but the threat has been so much that Echrome hasn't been able to get involved. We might finally see a late-game stage where these hunters can start to get involved in this game. It's all been jungle-centric so far, and even the solo lane is not really taking part. All of this fighting has been in this middle section of the map. Finally, though, we're seeing a rotation from Johnny over to the left-hand side. Echrome fully aware and wants to get out for sure.
Yeah, don't believe they have the ability to slip into the wall. They do just about get it, but look how much damage this build from Johnny does. It's absolutely insane. The hi-rez procs after the increased damage from the Acorn Blast. You just can't do it. You can't deal with it. It's like 600-700 damage. Imagine if this was a crit Ratatoskr. Oh, never mind. Don't want to think about that. That could be even worse for them. But at this point in time, yeah, Echrome back on this crit kind of a build. I don't think we've really seen this crit play much of an effect in at this point. And the question I've now got is 20 minutes in. Is that too early for Fire Giant? Because Hex Mambo don't really have much else they could go for outside of extending a bit far up for these towers.
Yeah, it's too early for Hex Mambo, at least without winning a fight beforehand. So I think the Scarabs are aware of that. They recognize that, hey, well, we are the ones who would like to be pulling these objectives, especially with the crit coming out from Echrome, but that's just not in their wheelhouse. So that means all they have to do is make sure that Hex Mambo are not comfortable and sneaking away an objective like we actually saw the Scarabs do in game number 1. As long as they make sure that if the Fire Giant's getting pulled, Scarabs show up to it and threaten Hex Mambo, it'll trigger a fight. Now, will the Solar Scarabs be able to stand up in that sort of fight? I'm not really sure. We're still not seeing enough from this Martichoras. The damage isn't really there. We're seeing Charon have some impact around the map, but not significant enough in these team fights. It's been pretty tough. Far too much to come through. Julio steals away a camp. Is this everyone now? Has everyone stolen away a camp at some point in this game? Because that's what it certainly feels like.
I think it may very well be just Sap who hasn't done so, but at this point in time, Sap could very easily do so over the wall. They've got more than enough pressure. I mean, look at this. There are 4 members from Hex Mambo all around the right-hand side. Johnny's not even there. And Solar Scarabs have so much fear and respect for what's going on that they are completely disengaging from any thoughts of a fight here. And now with the beacon opening again, this will be the 3rd beacon. But I love what Johnny's doing here. Johnny's just constantly causing pressure because if you take that 5v4 fight, Hex Mambo could still very easily win it. And now, look at that. Echrome's had to go over to the other side of the map. Doesn't matter. Johnny's not there.
Yeah, I think we're seeing basically what I was talking about earlier of Hex Mambo really need to take a fight before they can take this fire. And Solar Scarabs are just not giving it to them. They are ceding all of this pressure. Now we've triggered Hex Mambo to pull this objective, but they don't want the objective. They want the fight. I have to see if the Solar Scarabs off to bring Echrome into this one.
Julio is the one who ends up being pulled into from Echrome's ult, so that's where they'll start this fight off. Julio takes a little bit of damage right now, about half, but Johnny is looking to try and swathe everyone in. It's a good work from Solar Scarabs. It's very well held onto the backline as Zyrhoes, the first to try and look for some targets, but can't find it. It was a clone from Julio who was too low, not the real one. They got jebaited, as did I, thinking someone was going to fall, but it's Solar Scarabs' health bars who are too low, and Echrome left high and dry, left to die.
Oh.
Sap pushes forwards, gets a stun, and that's how it's done for the 2nd kill of this engagement. Health bars from Solar Scarabs just cannot weather this kind of storm.
It's exactly the fight Hex Mambo were looking for. It maybe took them a bit longer than they expected and was quite a tough engagement, but that's the space they wanted. They get these 2 picks. Now they can take the Fire Giant slowly in their own time. And yeah, it's unfortunate for Solar Scarabs. They had a great start to that fight, but with Julio not actually going down, as of course it was the clone, and a lot of their damage being put on there, and now Zyrhoes getting picked off under tower. It's just going from bad to worse for the Scarabs. I think this combination in the mid lane of emilitoo and Zyrhoes on the Martichoras, it's just not really working out. They can't lock down these targets, and they can't find the kills that they need, and it's just meaning that they're bleeding all across the map. The map is wide open for Hex Mambo to take their time, take a Primal Fury, really stretch this gold lead now, because now we are in a situation where Hex Mambo could take, for example, the next Fire Giant without needing to win a fight beforehand. Solar Scarabs are now too far behind to be able to stand up in an even fight, and they're going to have to wait to look at these Phoenixes for the defense.
It looks like that's going to be the case and things. And Julio now, you can see how well they're feeling themselves and what their game plan is. It's to be annoying in the backline. Brawler's Beat Stick, Heartseeker as well. 2 defense items is more than enough for them. And with how much pressure that they've been able to exert just by existing, just by being able to get up into that cloud and then re-engage with Johnny a 2nd time, everyone on this team feels like they have just that 2nd life bar. And that's without even factoring in Defender of Olympus.
Yeah, it always feels like a kill is just too hard for anyone on the Solar Scarabs to really secure. It's always like they're really reaching for it. They don't quite have enough damage. They don't have a lot of CC in the entire team composition, unfortunately. You know, maybe this is why we shouldn't see so much Charon coming out, because it really doesn't lend itself to this type of lockdown, kill someone off style. And if that's not what you're doing, I'm not really sure what Charon is contributing at this moment. We'll have to keep an eye on emilitoo to see if they can pull something out of the woodwork, but it's just not really gelling at the moment, and Hex Mambo looking to gel down this Phoenix.
They're not doing too bad of a job so far, but clear-wise, you've still got the Martichoras Acid Rain, you've still got double hunters on a defense here, but look at Johnny. Johnny trying to split some of the focus here. They're pushing up mid, and if they get the chance, they will jump over.
Pushing up in 2 lanes is always the way forward. That's what you want to be doing, looking to take their time on Hex Mambo. They have plenty of Fire Giant, but they can't actually end the game here because the Titans are out with the base. Looks like finally Deathwalker goes in.
Deathwalker up, following through from the sticks, pushes everyone from Hex Mambo back, but Solar Scarabs just can't afford to overextend on the engagement. The second they get out of Phoenix range, they are looking to get back into Phoenix range. As like you said, Titans over on the left, on the right side of the map, left to their own devices. Whether or not that has any impact here doesn't look to be the case here. Finally, Julio goes in aggressive, but again, just enough health to be able to get up. Deathwalker's ult is already expended, and now it's looking for Dzoni to just try and mop up what they can, but they still hold on to Solar Scarabs. But these health bars are waning, as is this Phoenix. There's a jump in from TheFrenchEmperor, but is it...
Finally, someone goes down. The health bars are so low, as is the health bar of the Phoenix. It's a long, atrocious fight, but Hex Mambo do end up taking it. And can they take this mid lane Phoenix as well? Looks like they're going to try it.
They'll try. Deathwalker death from below. Looks to go in, but immediately taken down. Athena round the backside, making everyone else safe and surely. At this point in time, the Titan is back home. And unfortunately, with 2 Phoenixes down, it is looking a mighty fine prize. Hell, somehow the Hex Mambo side's Titan has brought dutifully the last wave of minions in. This is a rampage in. It's just Zyrhoes remaining here. All 3 Phoenixes gone. The Titan marches forward. And Solar Scarabs, their dreams, they got them first blood. They got their first blood in on Hex Mambo. They got their victory in game 1, but Hex Mambo brush it off in their sweep back on through here. 2-1 to Hex Mambo.
Yeah, just see it there. The damage from Martichoras just not enough. You know, you can see the health bars are low for a lot of mid lane mages. That would be quite a frightening attempt to go for. It took them a long time as the Hex Mambo to actually get into that Titan room. When they finally did, they had a lot of health bars low, but Martichoras just couldn't put out the damage. Had the death from above finally at the end, but with the Titan as well, from the Chaos side coming through, it was just too much. That will be Hex Mambo putting that first game behind them. Not quite sure what happened there, but the more important thing that happened is that they won the set 2-1.
He certainly did. And the last game as well, like game 2 was Dzoni saying, oh, I'm awake, I'm supposed to be a part of this game. This game didn't feel like it was the Dzoni show. It just felt like after game 2, as soon as like TheFrenchEmperor spearheads the lead, as soon as that's shut down by Spudio in a quadra kill, all kind of morale gone from the Solar Scarabs.
Yeah, that's really the turning point. And, you know, we say the turning point normally as it was with like the gold and everything, but it's even more so that with the momentum and just the feeling that it seemed like at that point Hex Mambo were on top and were not giving it up. And they didn't. They ran it, they extended their gold lead, took everything well. It was a great fight back from the Solar Scarabs. They did everything they possibly could. It just didn't work out this time. Too clean with a Hex Mambo, and that's why they're your winners today.
And that will be the first set. And I say the first set because we will have another set coming on through for you from the EU SCC side of things. So we're going to go ahead and get things set up here. But thank you very much, Judas, and from myself and from all the production and everyone watching. This has been set number 1. We'll see you for set number 2 in a bit.